Hello and welcome to the MinnMax Show, a place about games, friends, and getting better. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by Jeff Marchiafava.
Hey.
Cyril Vasquez.
Hey.
And Jacob Geller.
Hello.
Friend of the show, returning champion. Welcome, Jacob. How have you been, man?
I've been, objectively fine is what a friend of the show, Griffin Newman, says, which is like the world's on fire, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah, you are well known for your essays on YouTube. They continue to just dominate the YouTube sales charts, the YouTube Times, New York Times bestseller list of YouTube videos.
That's right.
Always at the top. You have new videos about Cities Without People, which is Microsoft Flight Simulator.
It's a flight simulator video that turns into a discussion of how we will be living in the future and how maybe the perfect world of Microsoft Flight Simulator will get more and more different from our own as time goes on. So it's kind of heavy, but also, it's just look at Microsoft Flight Simulator for a while. Put that video on as a screensaver. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah, it's a strangely heavy game in and of itself. But we're not going to talk about Microsoft Flight Simulator for the full episode because we have a lot to cover on this episode. We have a bizarre, surreal experience to talk about in the industry here where Microsoft purchased Bethesda. We'll talk about what that means for everything under the sun. We'll talk a little bit about the next gen wars, pre-order mayhem, all that fun stuff. Then we're going to be joined by another special guest, Mary Kish, now who's the head of community marketing at Twitch, formerly GameSpot producer. And she's going to join us. We're going to talk about Hades and then answer a ton of great community questions where Ana Diaz will be joining us later as well. So a lot of clapping in this episode, a lot of hot swapping. Before we get to the meat of the episode here, Jacob Geller, you wanted to plug something.
Yes, I'm plugging right off the bat because it's kind of not about me this time. This Friday and Saturday, starting at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, that's the 25th, I am going to do a big ol' charity live stream. I am going to be playing through Sekiro, Metal Gear Rising, Revengeance, Beat Saber, Hades, a bunch of other stuff. They're all swords, or we're calling it Sword Stream, and it is for the Games and Online Harassment Hotline, which is a hotline it's a completely free, open, confidential thing that if you have experienced harassment in the gaming space, whether you're playing or developing or kind of anywhere in this sort of thing, if you're a streamer that's getting this, if you are watching a stream and you feel like you're being harassed, this is just a place to kind of talk to people. It is like other hotlines, but this one is made for and by people who are really familiar with our part of the world, and so they can give you very specific help.
So it's a charity stream this weekend, and you're going to be streaming on your YouTube channel?
On my YouTube channel and on my Twitch, which is not as big yet, but we'll get there, which is twitch.tv/Jacob Geller. And it also won't just be me. There may be people on this very podcast who make an appearance.
Very cool. Well, best of luck with that. And I would encourage everybody to tune in and donate if they would like to. That'll be a fun time. And while you're there, just cruise around that YouTube channel. There's another YouTube video about the future of writing in games that Cyril Vasquez and Ana Diaz make a hot cameo in.
It's true.
Very exciting. Cyril, was that exciting when you got to do a little acting voice work on a video essay?
It's fun. It's weird because I just get to do as many like I don't like, it's hard to do feedback on that kind of stuff, so I just did as many takes as I could, and I didn't understand the context of like, here's I was reading a Marvel versus Capcom 2 strategy guide, but I wasn't sure of like, here's how an idiot would read this, and then it cuts to me, so I didn't know what the context was. But yeah, like obviously it was well made.
Renowned idiot weighs in on MVC 2. Okay, let's get to it here. The huge news of the week: Microsoft has purchased Bethesda. Jeffem, take us back in time to Monday when you saw that news, and then give me the first thought in your mind.
I can't. Someone posted it in our Slack. I can't remember who did it, but it blew my mind first, and then I spent a good 10 minutes thinking is this the biggest video game news that I can remember happening? Like
ever?
Like what was the last like biggest news story? And as the only thing I could come up was when Microsoft bought Minecraft, I think was like the
I mean, E3 being canceled, but that's connected to so many other things.
By the time that happened, you kind of saw it coming.
Right. I mean, it is a megaton. You think about, I mean, it's the biggest acquisition in a very, very long time. So it is, you know, if you don't like sitting back and thinking about what this means, then baby, you don't like the game industry, because this is about as good as it gets for this thing. Like, oh my God, that's so crazy. Serial, where are you at with this thing?
It's definitely, I don't think anyone was expecting it. I think people were talking about rumors like, oh yeah, I remember, I think Jeffrey Grubb over at GamesBeat was talking about like Microsoft is looking to spend a lot of money, and even he was like, I didn't think this was what someone had told him, like someone is planning to spend a lot of money, but I didn't think this was what that was.
Right.
So it just, because you don't expect, like, I think people were talking about, you know, companies that might get acquired. I think there are still rumors about Sega getting bought, you know, Capcom is kind of in that tier for a little bit. I remember there was one other company that was looking to sell. I think it was Ubisoft for a little while, wasn't it?
Well, they had the hostile takeover thing.
Right. But like, I don't think anyone even suspected that Bethesda was like looking to be acquired or, you know.
Au contraire, Serial. If you do recall, at the start of this year, we had a predictions podcast, and I'm not going to point fingers, but a certain somebody pointed that this year Bethesda would be purchased by somebody else. I forget if I said Microsoft exactly, but we'll recap that at the end of the year and go through that exactly. But it was one of those things where I saw it and was like, wow, that is shocking, that is huge. But at the same time, it's not outrageous. It's like, yes, this seems like about right for the industry and the era we're in, where things are being consolidated down and Microsoft has the money to burn. So they ended up spending $7.5 billion to purchase Bethesda, which led me to wonder, where does Microsoft get all its money these days? Like, everybody just assumes Microsoft has a ton of money, but how? When was the last time I gave Microsoft money? I guess buying an Xbox Series X, but we'll get to that later. But like, it's not that often, right? It turns out Microsoft gets its money. Quarter two of 2020, they had a revenue of $36 billion and a net income of $11.6 billion. So this is barely, you know, not even a little over half of their net positive income for one quarter to purchase Bethesda, one of the biggest, you know, gaming publishers out there. But in terms of where Microsoft gets its money, let's see. 11.8 billion of that comes from Office, LinkedIn, Dynamics, and productivity and business processes. 11.9 billion come from the cloud stuff, Azure, renting out cloud space. 13
cloud stuff. Is that how they announced it too in the earnings call?
Yeah, they just said, you know, that cloud stuff that I guess people pay to host. Then we have 13.2 for Windows, Surface, Xbox, and gaming, and Bing ads, and more personal computing. Just in case you were curious about that type of thing.
Although I feel like the kind of boring answer is like, Microsoft's not a video game company. You know, right. as much as we like to think of like Team Xbox versus Sony Team PlayStation, it's like, I think that, you know, in terms of their total pie chart, what happens or doesn't happen with Xbox, you know, they care about it, but it's not like this will sink us if, you know, something goes terribly wrong.
Yeah. In a way, they're kind of like, if Google, like if Stadia had become really, really successful for Google, like they're kind of in that position where it's like, we have other sectors of our business, but, you know, gaming is obviously a big one. So they're closer to that model than like someone like, you know, Nintendo, right? And I know Sony also has like other divisions as well, but, you know, people tend to think of Microsoft as like, okay, they have Windows and they have Xbox.
Right.
And then obviously the other big news in that breakdown is that LinkedIn still somehow makes money. Which I don't know how that works. I'm not a business person. I have not updated my LinkedIn profile in a long time. So, you know, hats off to everyone at the team over at LinkedIn for making money, I guess.
Yeah, it was the news story right after on Game Informer's site about, Microsoft buys Bethesda, and then LinkedIn somehow still makes money.
Yeah, Megaton 1, they bought Bethesda. Megaton 2, LinkedIn making money.
A lot of people want to send messages in LinkedIn. You have to pay money or get the email address. I don't know how it works. But anyways, what this means for Microsoft is they've added another 8 studios to the fold. So they are now at a total of 23 internal studios. So for those studios here, we have Bethesda Game Studios, the Elder Scrolls Fallout team, id, Arcane, the developers Wolfenstein Machine Games, the Evil Within team, who makes the Evil Within team, Tango Gameworks, ZeniMax Online, which is crazy to think that, Microsoft just bought Elder Scrolls Online. They now have to maintain an MMO. A studio called Alpha Dog, which is a mobile studio, and then Roundhouse Studios was one that Bethesda also owned, which gave me pause, like, what is that exactly? That is the former Human Head team. So the original Prey team. Once Human Head went down, they formed Roundhouse Studios. So it's bizarre to think about, that original Prey talent over there in Wisconsin, now Microsoft owns that team as well. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So with this acquisition, according to GameIndustry.biz, they've added 2,300 employees. And according to a CNET interview, Phil Spencer said that it has doubled the size of our creative organization. Bonkers.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is redundancies that are going to end up with layoffs, which is unfortunate, but that is a huge, obviously a huge get for them.
Yeah.
I have a weird question, which none of us probably have the answer to, but like, do you think that like someone at just one of those studios, like the people working on Ghostwire Tokyo, do you think that they knew that they were being acquired by Microsoft like the week before it happened, or do you think that they like logged onto Twitter and were like, what the hell?
Someone on their team was like, you see this?
From what I know about how the way the industry works, I think people are kept in the dark a lot. I think like you would assume everyone's in the know, but I bet people got an email an hour before, maybe. I mean, this thing was pretty tight. So maybe they learned from the news, and the messaging, of course, it would always be this way. But of course, the messaging is, hey, we want to let these studios be their studios. We're not going to turn them all into Microsoft culture. We want them to kind of stay as they are. Just on the internal side here, we got an email from Bethesda PR being like, hey, just so you know, we're still the contacts over here. Like nothing's changed on our end. So you're not suddenly going to Microsoft. So we are still kind of a separate little island within the gigantic Microsoft family.
Yeah, that is always how acquisition talk starts, though, is that they're like, oh, yeah, we bought you guys because we love you guys. We're not going to change anything about it. Obviously, no one's going to be like, no, yeah, we're completely changing the company of this. We're like dissolving it immediately. I don't think very few acquisitions go that way, but I'm hoping that, that is what ends up happening long term, because I think Microsoft definitely understands what they want out of this. And it's, Bethesda doesn't have like that live service cash coming in yet. They don't have like that big kind of, okay, this is a huge success for us. People, it's just making money hand over fist.
Well, Elder Scrolls Online,
the closest. They do have that. Like that is their biggest one, but even that is like, it's not. I don't think on the level of like some of the bigger ones.
No,
I feel like Bethesda would love to have more of that kind of steady income, and I think that's maybe why ZeniMax maybe ended up selling the mob, is that they're taking a lot of risks, with something like Wolfenstein and Dishonored, like these single player games that aren't like universally like appealing, like something like Dishonored, I don't think has, made enough money for that franchise to keep going long term. And I don't think the last Wolfenstein was that huge of a success. So it's like they're taking risks and they're doing well, but like they're not like for the kinds of risks that I think a lot of other companies are taking, they don't have like that huge bankable thing outside of like Skyrim and Fallout, which don't happen regularly enough.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, they have been, ZeniMax has always been a quirky, standalone, independent structure. And so they've probably been scrappier than we think. These games aren't cheap. Yeah. Elder Scrolls makes them a ton of money, but they still have a lot of little studios that are putting out some cool, funky things. So yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable that they are just trying to stay alive. And it's like, okay, if we can get 7.5 billion, which is pretty impressive for the number they can get for ZeniMax, and like, yeah, I guess we'll do it. We'll give Todd Howard a yacht, done and done.
Yeah, and then Microsoft has that like vested interest of like, we need games that kind of make us stand apart. And here's I think single player games are a good way to do that, and also garner goodwill, right? Because I think a lot of what Sony has is like these single player games that have like this prestige around them and are like have a bunch of money behind them and kind of act as like you get it Sony because of the Sony exclusives. I think Microsoft wants something like that.
Yeah.
And they got them now. It's interesting. I was going to say I'm sure part of it was ZeniMax looking at the timetable for the next Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield, and being like, those are coming when, like, I'll take the $7.5 billion right now and not having
right.
to wait the years of development that those are going to take. But it's interesting that leading up to this, we kind of looked at Obsidian as Microsoft's answer to those Bethesda games. It's like, well, they have the Outer Worlds to compete with Fallout, and now they have Avowed coming, which was going to be their Elder Scrolls. But now they just have Fallout and Elder Scrolls on top of those too. So
I know it was like, Obsidian was the cheapest version of Bethesda they could have bought. And then they bought that and said, well, that was just an appetizer, baby. Now we want the real deal. And so that is crazy. It makes me wonder if they would have purchased Bethesda first, would they still have purchased Obsidian? It's unclear. Okay, let's just get to it right here. Do you think the Elder Scrolls 6 will be a Microsoft exclusive? Microsoft and PC?
Nah.
You don't think so?
I think that they just can sell, if they sell 10 million copies on PlayStation and they own the studio, they're still just making enough money off of that. I think that it will be a Game Pass game.
They said all this stuff is coming to Game Pass, which is confusing with Elder Scrolls Online, but yeah.
If the choice is you can pay $70 for it on PS5 or get it free, more or less, on Game Pass, I think that's a pretty good incentive overall, even if it is kind of coming to everything.
I think I'm with you. I think they will keep that in a very Minecraft sense of going across different platforms because, even Double Fine, which was acquired last year, I remember interviewing Matt Booty on the Game Informer show and asking him about after Psychonauts 2, which is coming to all platforms, what's the plan for Double Fine moving forward? And Matt Booty's like, yeah, I think we'll still continue to release Double Fine stuff multi-platform. Like they aren't as locked down as you would think. And especially something like Elder Scrolls being kind of grandfathered in on other consoles like Minecraft. I could see them keeping that on all consoles and then Avowed, that'll be the Microsoft exclusive, the Obsidian RPG, so they can still have like a taste of that Elder Scrolls thing that will be locked down. But then I keep thinking about, well, just so they don't enrage the fan base, maybe just new IP will be exclusive, like Avowed or even like a Starfield, right?
Yeah, because they even mentioned that Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo will still be PS5 exclusives, for whatever period they announced.
All deals are maintaining, yeah.
Right. So, which is weird, but yeah, I think this just speaks to what has been the narrative behind Microsoft for so long, is that like they're becoming less about selling you a console, more about selling you a service, and like maybe in the next 5 years, like their ultimate game plan is just to say like, yeah, Game Pass is available on PS4 or like whatever, you can get it wherever. Game Pass is just that is Microsoft Xbox division. It's just at Game Pass, and then the Series X is like, well, if you just want to buy a console from us, then this is the thing. But Game Pass is the product, is our platform.
We all live in the cloud now. Nothing's tangible. I think you're right. So Phil Spencer, the communication so far is he said that in terms of what will be exclusive, it'll be released on Xbox and PC. He said he's going to be taking it, and the team's going to be taking it on a case-by-case basis. Then he says this one in the official blog post announcing this. He says, one of the things that has me most excited is seeing the roadmap with Bethesda's future games, some announced and many unannounced, to Xbox console and PC, including Starfield, the highly anticipated new space epic currently in development. So the fact that he goes directly from, in this official post, Xbox console and PC, including Starfield. Maybe I'm just reading the tea leaves, but the fact that he's putting those so close together, that's what leads me to believe that maybe Starfield, the new IP, will be exclusive and they'll want to lock that down.
Yeah, I also wonder to what extent they're maybe willing to cut it off even financially, of just like, hey, well, Elder Scrolls is going to, like, we're losing money not putting this out on both platforms, but something like, hey, like, I could see this leading to something like, hey, we're making another Dishonored, even though we thought we weren't going to make any more because they weren't financially successful. But as an incentive to buy Game Pass, this is how that game comes to exist.
Right.
Is that like, here's a Game Pass exclusive or like a Xbox exclusive Dishonored that we can only do because it pushes people towards our platform.
Yeah. It is so fun to sit back and think about what this means. It's like, oh yeah. So the same company owns Doom and the Doom guy and Master Chief, like the two most famous helmeted bros are now living in the same house. Or even thinking about, oh my God, that weird Switch version of Skyrim with like the Zelda items in it. That is going to be such a weird anomaly for all time now, where it's like, oh, the Microsoft owned Nintendo tie-in there. But I guess they're getting buddier and buddier as time goes on, right?
It does. Those comparisons do make me think about all of the conversations of like, Wolverine can be in a Star Wars movie now or whatever, which is like, they're fun, but they also kind of hide an insidious truth, which is like, it's really fun to be like, all our favorite characters can be in things together. It's less fun to be like, one company owns our lives. And so even though I feel like short term, it's like, I kind of got nothing but positives for this. I mean, I pay for Game Pass. Like, I'm excited about new games coming. It's those kind of longer media landscape things that, like, I don't have any way of knowing, but I feel like I would prefer there to be a bunch of companies rather than one big one.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating development, but in general, I think this is bad news. The Game Pass thing, I understand, is positive, but consolidating down the industry, having less of a range, less of a competition, fewer E3 press conferences, I think it's a bad sign of where we're going in the future here.
Well, yeah, I remember when I first heard my brother and I first heard the news, he was like the only person who I ever saw, even across online. He was like, wait, what's going to happen to the Bethesda client? He was like the only person to remark on that. And it made me realize that I think Bethesda, maybe that, like, they had, in the past couple of years, I feel like they made a big swing towards like, we're going to like up our game as part of a publisher. We're going to have an E3 press conference. We're going to have our own client. We're going to try to become an EA effectively. And it feels like this is the result of them kind of like, well, we swung and it didn't work out as well as we would have liked. So this is kind of like our backup plan is to get acquired. And it's if you think about it that way, and if that's true, that's really just speculation on my part. It does feel like that's maybe a little bit of a weird arc for them, but as a consumer, I'm like, for now, I'm seeing all of Bethesda's stuff, show up on Game Pass is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. Joseph Stanichair wrote in, just to jump the gun a little bit on community questions, asking, what's our dream project? Combining all Microsoft IP, all Bethesda talent, and vice versa. What do you want to see happen here?
Can I get the original Prey 2?
Oh, because they have the Human Head team, the former Human Head team, Roundhouse. Oh,
I have no idea what they would call it, but like,
dude, how cool would it be if they?
What if it was called Prey 2?
Yeah,
again?
they could have called it Prey 2. That would be so awesome and weird. But technically, why not at this point? They have the weird Prey IP. I mean,
it's in the same place where it's like, here's a game that didn't do super well, but people really liked. Like it was kind of a cult favorite for a lot of people. So let's just make a sequel to that. It's in the exact same place as it was.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying, oh my God, now Obsidian can make Fallout New Vegas 2. I think the writing team's moved on. I think Obsidian has enough now with, Avowed and the Outer Worlds sequel, which Microsoft was teasing was going to be a full Microsoft exclusive there. So I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon, but let's see. Mixing and matching. Ooh, Arcane's Perfect Dark. I mean, we all know exactly what that is.
I think that would be a Prey kind of level of like, this is called Perfect Dark, but it's like not. It's got a character named Joanna in it, but like it's not that. I think it'd be interesting on the kind of smaller scale to have Moon Studios make a Commander Keen game. Even though I'm not a fan of I'm not a Commander Keen guy, I just think it'd be interesting to see that happen. Of just like, remember that time we brought Commander Keen back and you were kind of excited because it looked all right, but then it ended up being a mobile game.
So that's the Ori team. But remember, Microsoft doesn't own Moon Studios. That's one of the big lingering indies out there.
Sure. But they have like the relationships in place to make that happen.
Right. Ooh, Backstage Pass folks watching the podcast live, they want Fable from Bethesda Game Studios. Oh my God. I didn't even think about that. That's so fun. Yeah. Or Sutton says, let Rare make Doom. Yeah, this is what I want. I would just want the next E3 press conference for Phil Spencer's to walk up with a giant wheel and just spin it and be like, game on, we're actually going to make these, whatever it lands on.
It landed in bolts.
Yeah. You can customize your own gun, or like the wheel just lands on Arcane makes a new Dishonored. All right, great, awesome. Let's
yes, they did it. It was fun to read Todd Howard's blog post about all of this. There's I love this too, that a lot of the messaging from both Phil Spencer and Todd Howard's like, hey, remember Morrowind on the original Xbox? Like, I love that can be a talking point in 2020. It's like, Morrowind was pretty sweet back then, huh? That kind of got the ball rolling for this connection. But Todd Howard, obviously saying, hey, we'll keep making the games for the fans. This isn't going to change much. But he did say that the new consoles are optimized for the vast worlds we love to create, with generational leaps, not just in graphics, but CPU and data streaming as well. It's led to our largest engine overhaul since Oblivion, with all new technologies powering our first new IP in 25 years, Starfield as well as Elder Scrolls 6. I'm always very skeptical about Bethesda talking about engine overhauls, because I remember on the cover story back at Game Informer when I visited for Skyrim, that was like a huge messaging point. It's like, we've overhauled this engine. You're not going to recognize this engine. It's completely different from the past. And Skyrim comes out, it's like, that's the most Bethesda game I've ever seen. Like, it is the definition of a Bethesda janky game at this point. But do you take anything with Todd Howard in the blog post saying these new systems, plural? So maybe implying that Elder Scrolls will, or some of their games will still be multi-platform?
Maybe. I feel like Microsoft probably hasn't even made that decision yet.
Yeah.
And that it will probably depend on the next couple of years to come before they're probably kicking that can down the road and seeing, what's going to benefit them the most on that. But
yeah.
I don't know. I guess my biggest hope from all of this is that Microsoft will give Bethesda more support, or just yell at them to do more than just like the kind of overhauls they've done on their engines in the past. Like they need more than a facelift on their format for making these games, because that kind of giant open world RPG has changed so much over the years, and so many more people are doing it. Like, it was great when it was Morrowind because it was the only game doing it at that point. And there's a lot more competition out there. So hopefully, I know Microsoft is saying, oh, they're going to leave Bethesda alone and let them do what they've been doing. But maybe send a couple cooks into that kitchen.
Yeah. I would be optimistic about that. But if you recall State of Decay 2, that was also, I believe, when they were owned by Microsoft, and that was a tech disaster at launch. Yeah,
and that's kind of what has rained on my parade with this a little bit, because it's like. And you see all the same comments. Everyone's like, "Oh man, the next Elder Scrolls is going to be so great because Microsoft's going to give them so much support and stuff." And it's like, no, it is very much their MO to buy a studio and then just have the studio keep doing what they're doing. And I hope they have learned from State of Decay 2 and realized that they could use a little more resources and a little more help. They certainly have the money to fund some improvements.
Well, yeah, even before the Microsoft purchase, though, I mean, Bethesda was expanding in a big way with, teams in Montreal, and I believe a team in Austin that was also helping Bethesda Game Studios. So, I mean, they're already getting the manpower aspect in place, and we can cross our fingers about the tech. But sorry, I cut you off a while ago, Serial. What were you saying?
Oh, I feel like Phil Spencer is like smart enough about that kind of stuff to know, what quality control is. I don't think he's like, they might have a conversation about like him sitting down with Todd Howard saying like, look, they've got to stop walking indoors. This can't keep happening like this.
I'm sure that's the discussions executives are having.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think most of those discussions are just going to be like, look, we're going to let you do what you want. Just ask us for whatever you want, and we're going to set timelines accordingly. Like Phil Spencer seems like a smart enough boss to not be the kind of person, well, you have to release it in Q2 because that's what we need.
Because my name is Spencer. So the big question, is this it? Did they do it with this acquisition? Has Microsoft now met or surpassed Sony's IP?
No. I feel like it's even though this is like the biggest news you can possibly imagine, I feel like the decisions you would make whether to buy a PlayStation or an Xbox are kind of the same as they were before this happened.
That's interesting.
If I was going to buy a PS5, it wasn't because Elder Scrolls 6 was going to be on it. It was because these games that I know are coming to PlayStation and not to Xbox, like God of War and Spider-Man and whatever, that's what's going to be there. And so this is huge. I guess if you hadn't made the decision to buy Game Pass yet and now you're convinced. But I mean, for me, I'm still planning on buying a PS5 because there's still the games I want that won't be on other stuff on that. and that hasn't really changed.
Right. I also feel like even though, Microsoft has been making all these moves to acquire these developers, I don't know that we know what the ultimate kind of repercussions of that are going to be. Like, yeah, they bought Double Fine, they have, Ninja Theory, they have all these other developers, but we haven't seen the fruits of that labor yet. We're still kind of at the point where, like the Outer Worlds was kind of like their first big, like, hey, these guys are under our umbrella while this game releases. That's kind of been the closest thing. And that didn't feel like it changed the landscape of like, well, we're going to, it's on Game Pass, which is a big deal back then. But it still felt like, yeah, if I wanted, like, I can, if you're the kind of person who's like, oh, Xbox doesn't have games, I can continue ignoring Xbox because it doesn't affect me really. So we haven't felt the effects of all of these moves that they're making quite yet.
Yeah, for sure. Just for the absurdity of this acquisition. I mean, I remember hearing rumors years ago that were pretty strong about Microsoft's buying a huge third-party publisher that wasn't Bethesda, but it was one of those that was maybe even bigger than this. So like maybe that has like set my frame of mind for exactly what they're capable of and the type of big swing they're trying to take here. But this is bonkers. 7.5 billion. An Attack Corgi wrote in and gave some stats, and I've added a few of my own. I want you all to weigh in on what you think about these acquisitions and sales in the past. Let's see. Are these you can call them, are these deals, steals, or dumb? That's the game we're playing. A dumb amount of money to spend. Back in 2005, Bandai bought Namco for $1.7 billion. Deal, steal, or dumb?
I think that was a deal.
That's a deal. All right. 2006, Disney bought Pixar for, does anybody want to guess how much? Pixar.
It's going to be like embarrassingly low, isn't it? Like $400 million.
Yeah. We'll give you 600 if you don't give us Lasseter. No, actually, it was just below Bethesda. It was 7.4 billion in 2006 for Pixar. This is where we get into the embarrassing low. Disney bought Marvel in 2009 for $4 billion. Since then, with box office alone, they've made over 18 billion. Marvel.
Look, so, if I had a nickel for every time I said Bethesda's worth 1.75 Marvels.
At least.
Oh my God, it's insane to think about. All right, this is our favorite. In 2012, Zynga, my favorite publisher and yours, purchased OMG Pop, the developers of Draw Something, for $200 million. Jeffem, deal, steal, or dumb?
Everything about that is dumb.
All right, there we go. Disney bought Star Wars 2012 for $4 billion. Jacob, deal, steal, or dumb?
I guess deal. I mean, Disney's ultimate plan is world domination, so like they're dealing for that.
I also feel like it's not quite a steal because, like those movies were not cheap to make, and we've like I'm sure they made money for them a lot, but it feels like Star Wars is in this weird place now.
We're in a weird place now, but still, I think they've already made up that $4 billion. That's maybe the biggest steal of this entire list in my mind is Star Wars for $4 billion. It's just insane. So running through other purchases here, Microsoft bought Mojang, obviously, Minecraft, 2.5 billion. Facebook bought Oculus for 2 billion. Activision bought King for 5.9 billion. Tencent bought Supercell for 8.6 billion. AT&T bought Warner. If you want to go to the high end here, does anyone want to guess how much AT&T paid for Warner? How many Bethesdas it was?
11 billion.
It was 11 billion Bethesdas. It was 85 billion. Sony purchased Insomniac for 229 million, which that is a steal in my mind, baby. Steal. Oh my God. Yeah. Zynga bought Peak in 2020 for 1.8 billion. And Embracer Group, who will eventually come to embrace us all as the parent company of THQ Nordic. This was just this year, if you recall. They bought Saber Interactive for 545 million, which still blows my mind. That is dumb, I'd argue, but we'll see what they crank out. And then
I think the Mojang one is so interesting there because it's literally just buying Minecraft. There's some like Minecraft spin-offs, but that's the equivalent of like if Microsoft just bought Elder Scrolls. It feels like, it's like we're buying your one title.
Well, think about this. They now own Elder Scrolls and Scrolls. Like the companies that sued each other with Mojang.
They can drop the lawsuit.
Yeah, which brings it full circle. I realized that back in 2011 when I recorded a one-on-one discussion between Notch and Todd Howard, which was a little uncomfortable but fun to film. Now it's like, oh, it's so crazy. Both those people, well, I guess not Notch anymore, but both of them sold out to Microsoft, I guess, in their own unique way. But in terms of studios that could be purchased, like imagine if Sony just purchased like the Embracer Group or the THQ Nordic. They have 31 studios. And not even Sony. Imagine if Microsoft did that. If they really wanted to up the amount of games they could release and the amount of development talent they owned, like THQ Nordic would be another gigantic get that they could go for here. But
can't wait for Microsoft's HAN AMA. Get ready.
Shout out to Kris. Okay. Next gen mayhem here for everybody. Pre-ordering systems. We recorded last week's podcast just in the eye of a hurricane, as a wise man once sang. Not knowing what was going on, assuming pre-orders were going to be going live the next morning. It turned out they were going live basically as we were recording last week's podcast. Oh boy. Suriel, how'd you do in the mayhem of pre-orders for PS5 and Xbox Series X?
So I think I had 3 plans. I wanted to get a PS5 because especially after like the Demon Souls thing not being on PC, I wanted to get a 3080, and I was thinking about getting a Xbox. I think I'm 1 for 3. I got a PS5. I haven't gotten a 3080. And I think GameStop announced this trading program where you could trade in like your previous consoles to get, Series S or X. And I figured, maybe I can get a Series S for free, basically, if I trade in both my base and X. But GameStop got like 2 S's and they had so little supply, and I would have to go into a physical store. So at that point, I was just like, I'm okay.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, GameStop with the digital version, at least for the S, I think each store was getting like 2. Like, hey, how about the X though? Look over here, please. Take a disc, any disc. I was actually leaning towards getting the S. I know previously on the podcast I've said 7,000 times, like, I don't know why I have a PC. Why would I get the Xbox? And I was like, for MinnMax stuff, like we should have a console, right? And so I was going to get the S. Then I realized that one of the main reasons I want it is for backwards compatibility. So I'm like, well, I guess at that point then, without a disk drive, I got to go for the X. Yeah. So I ended up pre-ordering that. And for the Series X, it wasn't that bad. Like, it said that it was checked out on Walmart. I refreshed it once, went back in there, and was able to do it. For the PlayStation, it was bedlam. I managed to pre-order both. But for the PS5, it was so many refreshes, so many errors in the Walmart shopping cart trying to get that sucker to go through, and just kept spamming it, and eventually it went through. Hopefully only once. Jefflem or Jacob, how'd you guys do in the pre-order wars?
Well, I think I have found a back channel way of getting a PS5, meaning that I totally failed at getting one from a website, but I know someone who got 2, and so I might just be taking it off their hands.
5-finger discount.
Yeah, I'm going to steal
that's right.
it.
He got one off the back of a truck.
I'm kind of similar to you in the disk drive consideration, where like I've said before that the thing I'm looking forward to most at the launch of the PS5 is watching all the 4K Mission Impossibles on Blu-ray, and so I want that 4K Blu-ray player.
It's the only Fallout you're gonna get.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going for, and I think I'm comfortable enough. And honestly, if I don't, like, I'm okay waiting 2 weeks after they come out. I feel like it'll be easy enough to get one eventually. Yeah,
we had a Twitter poll asking like, hey, did you manage to pre-order anything? And 39% pre-ordered a PS5, 16.7% pre-ordered an Xbox. Tried and failed to pre-order was 17.7%. And then, 32.8% were just not interested yet, as they listed. And now I understand there was no both option there, and people were frustrated, but Twitter only allows for 4 responses. So don't blame me, blame Jack Dorsey. Is that the Twitter guy?
Yeah.
Mr. Dorsey. Jefflem, did you end up pre-ordering anything?
No, I'm still in the camp of like, there aren't any next gen games yet that I, like Miles Morales is the one game, and I can wait on that one. So I'll just the whole like, and I was watching everyone in our Slack channels like freaking out trying to find it. And it's like, I'll just wait until till they're out.
I just imagine you going in your backyard, sitting down in a lawn chair. You got a fruity drink and a long straw, and then you just tilt your hat down as everybody else is just panicking for these pre-orders.
You guys have a good evening.
I'll sleep out here then. Did you see that fun news story from today that apparently Xbox One X sales on Amazon rose 747% because people were accidentally buying those instead of Series X's? I feel so bad.
Oh, so the gaming was a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw someone float the theory that maybe a lot of that could have just been bots who were just misdirected to the wrong listings. But
do you think
that would it would be funny comeuppance? But the idea that. I think it was also only on Amazon, and I think because of that stuff, it was because their algorithm surfaced it like, well, this is what people usually click on when they search this thing, so we'll float it higher. Whereas I think that stat didn't surface on Walmart or Target. I don't know if they surfaced that data, but I guess it could be a combination of the retailer being kind of a little bit, the algorithm kind of misleading people, and people see the Xbox X, and they're like, yeah, that's the one. If the consoles also look similar enough to where like. Dude, I don't know. Maybe that's just like the vertical versus horizontal version of the console. For all I know, that's the difference between S and X. I'll just get the one that says X because it's for it is confusing. Like, and this will be the most confusing year for that because eventually, like, you won't be able to get a Xbox One X.
Do you think there are hundreds of people who accidentally bought a One X will receive the One X and be convinced that it is the next gen? Because what's the difference? I mean, they'll still be able to play all the games that they want to play.
And it also, Patrick Klepek tweeted today that Chrono Cross for the PlayStation is seemingly up 7,000% over the past week. And so these Amazon kind of sales figures might just not be telling the stories that we think they're telling.
Or there are whispers of the Chrono Cross Deepest Dive from MinnMax.
Or maybe you got confused between an X and a Cross, and they thought that was the new console.
That's the Xbox Series Cross. That's coming next year. That's going to be great.
I would love to see the series of orders of well, I can't get a Series X, I can't get a Series S, like Xbox One X, and they're no longer available because they don't make them anymore. Xbox One S, I don't know what that is. Chrono, that's close enough. Okay, I'll buy that one.
And they'll have a great time, damn it.
I'll buy 5. I'll have PS5 copies of Chrono Cross, and I'm set for next gen.
You mentioned Demon's Souls not coming to PC. We should do some mop-up from last week about what we learned since the last time we podcast and what an S show this is. Series S show. Demon's Souls... It is listed as a PlayStation exclusive. There was the Demon's Souls trailer... I know we touched on this last week, but there's a Demon's Souls trailer that said not available on other consoles for a limited time, also available on PC. Sony then took that trailer down, said that it was human error for saying that, and then the new video just says PlayStation exclusive. What do you all make of this? It's just nonsense, right?
Yeah, this is the opposite of a smart delivery. Yeah, it's so weird for that to have made it into the trailer. I don't know if it's if this means Demon's Souls is at some point going to come to PC, or if they just set, because I don't know how that makes it there without that being at some point the case. And they were just like,
I'm just going to practice typing some text into this trailer.
Well,
this is placeholder. This is our lorem ipsum is coming to PC.
It said also available on PC, ASDF, TGYH. So I don't know exactly what they're getting at, but Mavis Beacon was very proud of them. I mean, yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. But the part where it says not available on other consoles, I mean, is there a world where Demon's Souls is also coming to PS4 then? I don't know what to believe anymore, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it's really confusing. But obviously, I don't know that we should take them at their word of like, well, no, it's going to be PS5 exclusive forever. I think that was meant to be like this is a PC and a PS5, because otherwise they would have. Why not release it the same way they did Miles Morales? It's like, okay, you can get this on PS4 and then also get it on PS5. It would have been weird for them to push Demon's Souls over Spider-Man as the you need to get a PS5 for this one.
Right.
If that was going to be the case eventually.
Yeah. So a Sony rep told PC Gamer that, quote, Demon's Souls is exclusive to PlayStation 5. I know that's as clear cut as it can be, but I just don't believe it anymore, especially when bundled with the Final Fantasy XVI details that have been trickling out, where they say, oh, it's a PlayStation console exclusive, also available on PC. And then Eurogamer reached out to Square to ask about the exclusivity. And they say, Square says, we have no further information on if Final Fantasy XVI will be released on other platforms other than the PlayStation 5. Industry analysts are saying that they hear rumblings that it's a 6-month window. It is such a mess, and it makes me so pissed that Sony can just say Final Fantasy 16 console exclusive, and then it's not going to end up being a console exclusive. It's just the height of bullshit and anti-consumer nonsense.
This is the thing where at the beginning of Fargo it says based on a true story.
Yes!
And you Google it, and it's like, oh, they just lied. Like, they can just tell a lie.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. And like, if you go back to the reveal of Final Fantasy VII, for the remake there, the framing is, they say at the end, play it first on PlayStation 4. Which is great. And now, just in this time, it certainly seems like we're inching towards, because of this, mealy mouth Square's comment, that it is going to be released on other consoles eventually. But now apparently just truth doesn't matter as much. Let's just say console exclusive, no one's going to call us on it. It's bullshit. Just think about like all the Final Fantasy fans that don't have a PC. They're like, well, now I need to spend $400, $500 to play Final Fantasy, and it's probably not going to be true. It's just lying. It's insane.
Yeah, it seems like it's been years in the making, because there were previous E3s where, Xbox would always say Xbox exclusive, world exclusive, and then you have to like look at all the fine print details of it. And I get that, like companies want to do this because if they just come out and tell you that you can buy it somewhere else in a year, then you may end up waiting. But I think the larger effect that all of this has is everyone ends up waiting for everything anyway, because you don't know if they're saying it's an exclusive. Like, well, okay, sure, maybe it is, but I'm going to have to wait to find out anyway. And so I think that just turns everyone off. Just come up with, console, just make specific exclusives. Just call it a Sony exclusive or whatever, or, and just say if it's coming to PC. Yeah. Or just say that it's for a year, whatever.
Right. Like, just play it first. That's fine. You'll still get a lot of Final Fantasy fans that aren't going to want to wait a year or 6 months or whatever it is. Yeah. That's totally fine. But they're just counting on people not to remember that, not to pay attention to it. In theory. But based on that Square comment and the amount of hullabaloo about this thing, I am so skeptical about that, and it really is frustrating. And I went back and watched that trailer again. Still an unbelievable trailer. I love the vibe of Final Fantasy 16, even though it's very Game of Thrones, where each house seems to be representing a different summon. Like, I think it's very cool. And it's fun to... go ahead.
And, like, whatever goodwill or whatever extra thing you're going to get out of whatever the exclusive deal is, like, you're going to get that even if you're just upfront. But now it's all ill will of people being confused and not knowing what it is and feeling like your company's lying. Like, that's not what anybody wants out of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I have a weird tech question about exclusives, which is that these consoles are being sold on partially they're like hyper fast hard drives that can like load things better than anything can ever before.
That's right.
If you don't know if it's a PC, if it's coming to PC, but it might be. I mean, this isn't even, this is a question I've had kind of before this, but like, can all PCs do this? I mean, I have a computer with a solid state drive. Is that different? Are you going to need one to be able to play this? And do they have to design differently if it could potentially be running on something without this super mega hard drive?
I just don't think any games are going to take the bold approach that somebody like a Insomniac would with Ratchet and Clank, where the premise and the idea of jumping through rifts is dependent upon that load time, because it's like set, this is actually a PlayStation 5 exclusive. And so from what I understand, PC stuff, yes, it's a solid state drive, but this is a very high-end solid state drive that the consoles are using, so it's a little bit faster. So it's the rough ballpark, but not exactly the same.
I think what they're using is like a specific kind of like tailored version of what's called, I think it's like a NVMe drive, which is like a solid state that you basically, instead of it like attaching it through SATA cables, you just clip it directly onto the motherboard. So
I bought one of those, baby.
So I'm there. Yeah, it's basically the SD card equivalent versus like running it through a disk, which is like a comparable kind of difference between like an SSD and a hard drive. So I think those are even faster than that, right? So I think that is going to be the difference, because I remember they showed off the Cyberpunk system requirements, and they were like, surprisingly low, but they also said like, hey, you're gonna, we recommend an SSD for this. So I can see it being that way, where it's like, hey, if you're running it on PC, it might load a little slower if you're running it off of SSD. But if you want if you want it to match what a PS5 is going to be able to run that game as, you're going to want like this, that version of an SSD versus and there are different tiers of that stuff as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the other reasons that I haven't run out to do any of these pre-orders, is because all of the games that they have announced, that they're saying is also coming to PS4. It's like, well, okay, I'm not going to play it on PS4. I would probably just wait and play the PS5 version anyway. But it's not making me run out if it's a game that you are kind of hamstringing in order to make it run on the lower consoles. Like if Miles Morales was coming out and they could actually say, hey, this can only run on PS5 because we're taking full advantage of it. Like that is an incentive for me to jump into next gen. But at this point, it's like, how many years are we going to have to wait into development? Like Ratchet and Clank's going to be the first game that, takes advantage fully of it. So
yeah. And in God of War news as well, which we're just calling God of War Ragnarok. We assume it'll be called God of War Ragnarok. Maybe they were waiting to see what Assassin's Creed was going to call theirs, and they went with Valhalla. So now God of War can take Ragnarok. What's that?
God to War.
God to War, Fimbulwinter, whatever the hell they want to call it. I've been thinking more and more about this, Jeff. For 2021, I think this is going to be cross-gen as well. I bet this is going to be PS4. They're not going to be reinventing their tech within 3 years. The fact that there's still those realms to explore, I think this is coming to PS4 as well, and we should just brace for that impact. And I'm sure fans are going to be pissed, but when you have the install base of the PS4, it just makes complete sense for kind of an smaller iteration, smaller evolution of the God of War formula here.
Yeah, it's a bitter pill to build up a console, for how many ever years that it has been, and build up that huge install base and then just wipe it all out and say, okay, we're going to spend all these millions of dollars making all these new games, and we have to start from scratch with the sales. So I get that, but the Horizon Zero Dawn 2 announcement too, that it's coming to PS4, that is a huge bummer for me.
Well, Jim Ryan. Jack Ryan did not comment on this. Jim Ryan from Sony, he gave an interview to the Washington Post, and he said, quote, "No one should be disappointed. Even you, little Jeffem, with that cute gray shirt," is what Jim says. He says the PS5 versions of those games are built from the ground up to take advantage of the PS5 feature set, and we have an upgrade path for PS4 users to get the PS5 versions for free. So they finally said that for free, which they weren't saying before.
Okay, that's nice, but it's also not. You're not building it from the ground. If you're using it to just make it prettier or to shorten the load times, I will appreciate those improvements, but that's not building it for the ground up. I want something that's built that just cannot run on the PS4 because the PS4 doesn't have enough power for it. It's going to be a less pretty version on the older consoles.
Yeah.
Weird throwback. Do you remember that God of War 2 came out after the PS3 release?
Yeah, 2007.
That was, which would be, and their reasoning then was we just know the PS2 so well, we're not going to rush one out for the PS3. What if God of War Ragnarok only came out on the PS4? They're we just know the system so well, we don't want to rush into anything new.
Yeah.
I
think the whole PS4 not taking advantage of the PS5 stuff, I think that has kind of bothered people, rightly so. But there's a part of me that is look, I kind of think the improved graphics and better load times are what is going to be the thing in this gen. I don't think, I'm very curious to see what the difference between something Horizon Forbidden West running on PS5 versus whatever the end of life titles, what is going to be the huge technological difference that we're going to look at and say oh, this clearly could not have been done on a PS4. And obviously we never know what that looks like. You could not have predicted something like The Last of Us at the beginning of the PS3's life cycle.
Yeah.
But I kind of the most cynical part of me thinks that's all we're going to get is the games are going to run faster and they're going to use tech that makes stuff stream in better. And so we're going to get fewer loading times. But I kind of think that it is just going to be the equivalent of you have ray tracing, it's going to be more of a PC oriented upgrade than here's a whole new generation of gaming.
Yeah.
Well, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, which is a game that I think of as a true generational leap, oh my God, look at this AI system.
Yeah.
That released in some version on the PS3 and 360.
Yeah, it just didn't have.
It is possible to completely kind of gut a game's systems and release it on a previous console generation. I'm not sure if that's what they're planning on doing, but like it's weird that when I think about like that's not graphics or loading time, it's a true like kind of brain improvement that couldn't be done on previous consoles, but they did put that on a previous console. So who knows?
That is true.
Yeah,
I also think
if they did that for Horizon Zero Dawn 2, then I'd be a happy camper.
Yeah, I also wonder like to what extent standard like franchises that we already kind of know like Horizon and God of War, like even like conceptually those things aren't necessarily built around the technology. So it's like the fact that this is a prettier kind of iterative sequel to this game kind of works for it just being a PS4 PS5 game versus like what Jacob was saying, like the next gen games are going to be games that kind of are played differently, like something like the Nemesis system that didn't work on previous consoles. It's like, what are the technological systems that the new tech allows? I think that's not going to be something that you get out of kind of like long running or current franchises. I think you're going to need new IP that feels conceptually different from other things.
Yeah. Hey, good chat, everybody. There's a lot still to try and understand about the next generation. I'm sure every week we'll have next-gen updates and confusion and clarifications, all that fun stuff. Jeffem, you're the best. Would you like to clap out, sir?
Have a good evening, folks.
My God. Mary Kish, welcome to MinnMax.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, you're so great. We were talking about maybe having you on last week, and you're the best. You're just immediately like, yes, I'm down for anything. I will be on whenever. Why are you so flexible? Why are you so easy to work with? What's your secret here?
I don't do anything all day. Your schedule is pretty open then. It's funny because we work, I work at Twitch, so it is a online platform. And part of that is not just doing the work, the hard work, but it's also observing creators and seeing what they're up to. So this is, in many ways, it's just research. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
When they ask me what I did this week,
you're in a meeting.
I'm in a meeting.
Very long meeting talking about Hades. I totally get it. People might remember you from being at GameSpot. People already in the Backstage Pass are talking about Resident Knievel, your series with a friend of the show, Mike Mahardy. What is the status of Resident Knievel? Have you done everything? Have you done the Game Boy games at this point?
Let's see. We've done all the numbered series. So we did do Resident Evil 1 through 7 now, and we did some bonuses like Code Veronica, some of the more popular favorites. We tried to stick to most like major consoles and PC. So we didn't do like, if there's like an iPhone adaptation, I don't think we got there, but we're doing our best. And then when we ran out of Resident Evils, we ended up getting into Dead Space. So I did finish Dead Space 1 and 2. And we're going to be moving on to Dead Space 3 next week, hopefully.
Oh, what are you prepared for with Dead Space 3? Have people really lowered expectations, or has there been like a cultural rebound where people are now defending Dead Space 3, or where's it at?
It's funny. I think the general consensus is 1 was game changing, 2 is absolutely beloved, 3 was like, oh no, it's starting to go downhill. So I haven't played it. I don't know that much about it. I know it's co-op, so I'm excited about that. And I think I was going to compare it maybe to a Resident Evil 5, where it's like you can't always go uphill. Maybe it's a bit downhill, but the fact that I can play with another person should make entertaining gameplay. So it might not be the most ideal experience, but I'm excited to see what they've done with it.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up. Are you planning on playing Dead Space Extraction, the Wii light gun game?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I didn't know that was a thing.
History would prefer to forget.
What's been your most frustrating moment with Mike Mahardy? Let's just say on the streams, not real life.
You have to I have to really go through the recesses of all my memories. Mike Mahardy is chaotic.
He's kind of a little shit a lot of times.
Yeah, he's a wild card, and he knows that. And so I have some of my best memories with Mike, and he also is just like this tumultuous, ethereal being that who knows what he's going to bring to the table on any given day. And I would say, I think there was a very specific time in Resident Evil 5, which was a boss fight in a very contained space, and you have to work together. And there was a time where we weren't getting along well trying to work together to take down this boss. And I told him he could do a better job. And he put down the controller and just stared at me while I eventually was killed in this exhaustive 45-minute fight. And I think at that point it was like, we don't have to do this. We don't have to be here. Games should be fun, but here we are, and I think we had eventually worked past it. But that VOD is still available. The Resident Evil 5 experience, where it almost broke our friendship. That was real.
And yeah, it wasn't him putting on a show. Like, he was genuinely pissy.
He is genuine all of the time, whether that means he's being funny, obnoxious, or a little baby boy. Those are all real.
Perfect. Well, hey, I saw you've been streaming Hades.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's a fever dream of a game. It's absolute delight to play, especially to stream, because the reactions to what's happening in any kind of permanent game are fabulous for your chat to enjoy when you work, an hour to get somewhere and then.
That's great. Jacob Geller, I think you've been playing Hades all year, right?
I have been playing Hades for 2 years, I think. I mean, I bought it on the day that it was available on early access. It was like Epic Game Store launch, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, especially in the past couple months, I'm doing like multiple runs a day, every day now. Just can't stop.
It seems like it has taken the world by storm. And Surreal, you reviewed it for GameSpot, just for the full circle here?
Yeah. I played it a few months ago. I started playing just because it was kind of nearing full release, and I figured, okay, at this point maybe I can start getting my feet wet a little bit, so that by the time they release the game, I'm kind of in a position to just beat the game, and get it over with. But yeah, I'm also like just super in love with this game. I've beaten it at this point, gotten to the end boss and like at least 20 times, and I'm still like in a position where like, oh yeah, if I could just continue playing this all day, because they give you so many ways to do that, and both through like gameplay and story like paths, that I just have no intention of stopping to play this game anytime soon. It's incredible. It
really feels like a magical release that Supergiant has just been honing and honing and honing. If you don't remember, we talked about it on the podcast before, but it's the roguelite trying to escape hell is basically your goal here, trying it again and again and again. And it seems like people are falling in love with the story. There's a lot more story in here than they expected. I mean, I watched Daniel Dwyer's great no-clip series on the development of Hades, and there's a fascinating current of Greg Kasavin over there just saying, yeah, somehow the game is like 98% on Steam, and I don't know how it's possible. I feel like something's going to topple it. And now the game went 1.0, and on Metacritic's at 92. I think it's at 93 for the Switch. It just seems like everybody is like, oh my God, this is probably game of the year. Mary, is it in the running for you at this point?
I mean, it's a fabulous, really well-rounded game. Greg Kasavin is a tremendous mind, and everything that team has put out, I've always kind of fell in love with. And I've always found that, if we're going to talk about Hades, it almost kind of behooves us talk about like the various games that Supergiant has come out with, and how they've all been kind of pinnacles of culture, how we've latched onto them from their music to their design and to their gameplay. I mean, everyone just remembers Bastion as like this like game changer, this like punch of a game that everyone was like, well, you have to play it because it's so beautiful and it's so stunning. And they do these little particle effects when you're walking around and the floor just comes out of nowhere and appears. It's just like, it was innovative at its time. It's still innovative. I don't know if you guys have ever gone back and played it, but it's like still dope. A little rough around the edges, but it's like still incredible. And then Transistor, like, they just like have consistently done this.
It's so wild just for creating new IP, and every one of their entries is it's just confident. It feels like rock solid game design, even with a genre where it shouldn't be, where it's been in early access for a while and being tweaked. But even in the early stages of early access, it's like, well, this just feels like a rock solid, confident Supergiant game again here with Hades.
Yeah, it's never not felt great. And one of the things that's been so fun about playing it through early access is like they would have in-universe explanations for it being in early access. And like one of the amazing things about the game is it just has like genuinely probably tens of thousands of voice lines. Like I have no idea how much audio is in there, but it's nuts. And like in early access, you would get to places where like you would get to the end and it would say like well, Zagreus should have won here, but let's just pretend that he fell down a very steep hole and died. And then he would die and like restart because the rest of the game hadn't been made yet. But they still had like dozens of different lines explaining why you couldn't go further in the game because it wasn't finished yet. It's wild.
Yeah, I think they mentioned something about like, oh yeah, we're doing renovations here, and like we're gonna hold off until the renovations are complete, and that is kind of how they justify it. And I think that's always been their greatest strength. Is like figuring out how like here are these kind of concepts that in a lot of games they people take the fiction behind them for granted. This, Supergiant has always been fantastic about like no, let's take the fact that this is a roguelike and turn it into the story and like the medium through which we're telling the story. And it feels also like this is just a culmination of everything they do so well, where they have like this really strong voice acting, which is a lot of what kind of inspired Bastion and was made even better in Transistor. This gorgeous art style that they've from day one have always been able to do. In a lot of ways, the gameplay feels like Bastion 2 in that you have this action-based isometric game with a lot of different weapons that all play very differently, and then they have a lot of the incredible like storytelling prowess of Pyre, where not only do they have like all these interesting characters that are all unique and great and are well designed, but you also get a lot of like the thing in Pyre where you could, if you didn't understand a term, you could have it defined for you in the text. They do that with all the different gameplay stuff here, where it feels like, oh, what does a jolted mean? And when you're highlighting the option that says jolted, it'll tell you this is what this means. And so and they're always really good about like, here's a really unique way to tell a story that is different from just like, okay, you play a section of a game, you see a cutscene, and then you keep going. They've never really used that as a crutch. They've always used the gameplay as like, whether it's choice or roguelikes, they always like find really interesting stories to tell with that medium in mind.
Yeah. And Serial, I think I saw you tweet that this is your game of the year at this point.
Yeah, I think this is like the first game that like has made me want to replay Kentucky Route Zero, because that felt like a lock at this point. And I was like, okay, I do have to play that game again, because this feels like I'm thinking about this game all the time when I'm not playing it. In a way of just like both from the perspective of like, okay, I tried this build and this is what didn't work about it. I want to go back and do this exact same build, even though it's all the perks are, given to you randomly, but I want to do it with this thing and see if that works better. But I'm also thinking about like, okay, there are these like still things, I've beaten the game, I've seen credits, but there are still like storylines that I want to see through, just like side quests and all these these really cool upgrades. Like I just this morning found like a really cool like permanent upgrade for a weapon that just makes it way different that I really want to start digging into. Yeah.
Mary, do you have a go-to weapon at this point?
I'm still kind of sussing them all out, but I would have to say I feel a connection to like a crossbow type situation and maybe going from a distance. So the bow and arrow has been like something I've enjoyed using a lot. And I've been messing with the shield a lot too, just because I like a wide range. The bow actually does that as well, where the special is like a span effect.
Right.
And I really enjoy a nice like AoE move as opposed to being like very specific with my attack. So they're both things I gravitate towards. I have to say I find that to be like a glowing review if you're considering this type of game over something like Kentucky Route Zero, which is like this extraordinary game in terms of story, dialogue, and narrative. Like that's its entire focus. Its entire concept is like narrative and taking on this beautiful story. We have to see where it ends. And to see how this game like stacks up against that is just phenomenal, because when I think of Supergiant games, I do think of a strong narrative, but maybe not deep. Just strong. Like you get really attached to these characters and you fall in love with them and you want to see what happens to them, but maybe like not all these intense interwoven stories. And so I think that's really fascinating and something really to point out if it's like on par with something like that. You're talking about a game that perhaps will attract you because of how visually stimulating it is and how solid the gameplay is. But holy cow, if the characters are that deep, that's probably something I've never seen from a game from this company before.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably like say that I think I like Kentucky Route Story's story better than this, but it's obviously games are made up of different ways, but I like the gameplay is so like interesting to me. Like it feels like the variety comes from the right place, which is not from things that feel finite, where it's like you have a finite number of enemies that you fight, you have a finite number of rooms and stuff, but it's the way that like the roguelike aspects are, how do you want to get stronger, not like, you know, what is going to happen to you. So it never feels like you have a bad run of like, well, I just didn't get this thing that seems pretty quintessential to doing well, so I'm just screwed this run. It always feels like, okay, there are so many ways to power up your character that you never feel like you don't have that kind of agency, and like that part of it I think is what I'm really gravitating towards. But also, yeah, like the fact that the story is one of the most interesting parts of it is still like, so it's not something I would have expected from a roguelike, which is always like, oh yeah, just repeatable, put on a podcast and you can just play this. Like still where I am in the game, which is still like 50 hours later, I can't justify putting on a podcast yet, because I'm still like seeing all these interesting story threads and how they're delivered. Like that stuff is still really well done.
Yeah.
Also, one thing that this has over Kentucky Route Zero is every single person in the game is hot. Just every character.
Can we talk
no
about the
hotties
smoke show of this game for a second? Can we
just
talk
like-
about it?
I love how they were just like every single person. It doesn't matter if they're death or like a kind of tree that's singing. Everyone's going to be hot.
Cerberus is good looking. You got to get them all.
Those are two
Even
very
the
good,
dog
three
is
very
hot.
good boys. Yeah, and they're all hot in very different ways too, which is like they're not just all like, you know, this entire medium, but like I think you look at a lot of animes where it's like, oh, the girls are very pretty, but it's like they all kind of have like the same body shape, they all kind of have the same silhouette. Here it feels like these are all very distinct art styles. You look at someone like Artemis or like Athena, and like Aphrodite is very like traditionally like, ooh, like I'm basically naked all the time, but it's like Athena and like Artemis are all like fantastic, and they're all like, they all have this really cool thing of like, oh, I'm glad to see Artemis because she's going to give me a ton of damage, but she's also going to have like this very cute line where she's just like, yeah, well, you know, I don't like anybody, I hate everybody on Olympus, but you're kind of cool. All right, here's crit damage. Like they have all these interesting exchanges between them, and then sometimes they'll just have a thing where you'll get like a conversation between Athena and or like Ares and Zeus, where Zeus is like, yeah, Mars, give him another bonus. He's like, he's earned this one, and Ares is like, all right, I guess, Dad. And then it's like, here's a boon that combines both the aspects of Zeus and Ares that is like a really powerful buff. And so that is just like this awesome melding of like gameplay and story in a way that you don't see, that a lot of games take for granted, I think.
Are you attracted to them because they give you extra boons?
I mean,
No shame there.
if they've got boons, you got to flaunt them, you know? Like
No,
shame
because
there.
I'm also attracted to the Furies who just kick my ass repeatedly.
The Furies are hot too. You've never seen anything like this. Their previous games were all stunning, but none of them took me to horny jail. This is the first game where I am like blown away by how attractive the lead characters are. And they know it because they're putting them in like no shirt situations and like loose clothing situations. And it's a joy. It's a genuine joy in this hell-soaked year to be able to just sit back and see these like stunning characters. Some want to help me, some want to kill me, but they're all smoke shows.
And they all
and
have
you
just
would
a beautiful voice too. It's all just understated and confident, and oh, it's great.
Yeah, you look at it, it's so weird that like one of my favorite characters is a tree, and I'm just like, I think this tree is hot. I think this is a very hot tree.
There's a really good article on Kotaku today by Ash Parrish called Black Athena, How Hades Gets Its Gods Right. That's about like, one, how they're all hot, but two, how they're really diverse. And they have this quote from, you know, one of the game's leads that was like, oh, duh, they're called like Greek gods because they were worshipped in Greece, not because they all come from there. So it's talking about kind of like how it's like, we don't have to like make up some reason why all these different people came to Greece. It's like, they're from all over the world. They're just like in the same pantheon.
They're gods. They can look whatever the fuck they want to look like.
Yeah.
If you can make them a tree, you can make them different backgrounds. It's ridiculous. There should be no discussion over it except for how hot they are.
It begins and ends there.
So it's rare that I think a game is so is firing on all cylinders,
right?
In this way, where it's like the gameplay's really good, music's amazing because they have, you know, Darren Korb and they have Ashley Barrett who does a lot of the voices there. Like the story is like something I'm still interested in, and the gameplay is just rock solid and something I'm thinking about all the time. Where it just feels like like, you know, if you were breaking this down into component scores, it would just get like 5 stars across the across the board, where it's just like I like every part of this game.
Reviewers tilt off the charts.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. It's out on PC and on Switch, and they seem like they're open to other consoles in the future. But watching the NoClip series, they're like, well, we're still a pretty small studio, so we need to be confident in one. I think the Switch is a great choice. I assume it runs well. I don't know. Has anybody been playing on Switch?
Yeah, I've beaten the game on Switch as well a few times for the review, and it kind of says something when I was getting the email from Callie, the reviews editor at GameSpot, and she was like, "Well, they're not going to have cross saves at launch, and we want you to review the Switch version as well, so you're going to have to start over." And I was like, "All right, that's fine. I can. I'll keep playing. I'll start over." Yeah, like. And it also was, as someone who had beaten the game and had all these upgrades and stuff, it was kind of humbling to be like, yeah, I could probably beat the game first try. And it's like, no, Meg stopped me on my first run on the Switch version still. But like, I think if you're afraid of roguelikes for being that kind of like, oh, you're going to have to, like, this is going to be an impossible task. And, like, there's no point in playing it if you're not into narrative. I will say that the game eventually makes it like pretty easy to beat to finish the game, but then it also makes it very difficult if you want to keep adding mods and stuff to like make the game harder. And you will eventually get to a point where you like credits roll. Like there is a definitive ending to that story. But what I like about it is that it's not like, okay, I'm going to tell you the story of Hades. It feels more like, like I mentioned in my review, it feels like living in like a house for a few months where you're just kind of like, okay, we're going to pick the story back up that we were talking about earlier. But this isn't going to be all we talk about for the next hour or so, right? It's going to be, we're going to talk about this. And then also I mentioned this other thing, and it's like all these different plot lines kind of happening at once, but they do eventually like all come together in a way that is like gives you this final resolution that feels really well made. That's
awesome. Yeah, I've just been amazed by the efficiency of the storytelling too. It's like, no character is really going on monologues. It's just, here's everything you need to know. I mean, it's demonstrated even by the very beginning of the game. It was like, hey, trying to get out of hell again and again and again. You get to know your dad, get to know everybody so fast. And not that it's a direct comparison, but it's bizarre playing this and then jumping to Super Mario 3D All-Stars and playing like the opening of Super Mario Galaxy, where it's just like spamming the A button, like, I don't care about the stars, just let me get to the fun gameplay, please. It's just like the complete opposite end of the spectrum for efficient storytelling in games here. Jacob, you've been playing a lot of 3D All-Stars?
I've been playing a good amount of it. I bought it on release day. Galaxy specifically is a game that's super close to my heart, and so I just kind of wanted to have access to that. I've never played Sunshine, and so this is my first time playing Sunshine, and I played all of Mario 64 first, and so going to Sunshine kind of feels like a quantum leap in that collection because they didn't really do any updating to any of the games. And so 64 is still in kind of like an aspect ratioed, like, 480 running, whatever. And then Sunshine is widescreen and beautiful. And so even though I know that's kind of like the weird black sheep of the Mario series, for me, I'm having a pretty good time with it. Yeah.
What is this about the controls aren't inverted anymore and you can't change it and they used to be inverted? Is that the deal?
That's what I understand. This is all from Imran Khan's tweets, so not firsthand experience, but I think the controls were by default inverted in the GameCube one, and now they are by default not inverted, and there is no option to change it. So not only is there no choice, it's opposite to what the game originally was.
It's so wild.
I find that a bummer, considering like there's always like those online wars about inverted or non, but the reality is that you're changing the accessibility for so many like beloved fans of that series. So to change it and then add insult to injury by not offering it as an option, I find a little rude to the hardcore fans of that game.
And of accessibility options, it seems like this is the one that's closest to like literally just flip a switch. Like
right.
That means down now. It's not a huge adjustment.
It should be on the same level as just changing the button prompts there for the tutorials. Like who knows? But I think that it speaks to like 3D All-Stars in general, right? Where it just feels like bare minimum. And we are playing through Mario 64 for the Deepest Dive, which is our huge community game club, which is a very fun time. So that's going to be airing on Friday with myself, and Dan Reichert will be joining us for that one, and Ana Diaz and Ronnie, my friend Ronnie from the Final Fantasy VII Deepest Dive. So there's a lot to talk about with Super Mario 64, so you can find that on our YouTube channel. But I did not think I would be so bummed out about Mario 64 not getting the full remake treatment. I know right when it was announced, a lot of people were like, oh, I wish they just overhauled it, gave it the full remake treatment. 2020's had so many amazing remakes in it. Let this be another one. And I was like, Mario 64, it's great. You go back to it, and it's, God, I just wish it was fully remade. Just to have like complete camera control in Mario 64 would have been amazing instead of a very frustrating camera, which we can talk about in the deepest dive.
Yeah, I also feel like, I don't think this is a hot take, but I think 64 is probably the one that's aged the most. Where like I think your memories of that game are like, oh yeah, it was like a perfect platformer in which you could do whatever you want. There's all this wall jump, but like it does feel like clunkier than I remember it being. Of just like the specific ways you have to wall jump and like kind of like some of the hitboxes and stuff. It feels kind of less refined, especially making because I played. I got like 30 stars in 64, and then I said, oh, I'll try Galaxy, and then I just played it for several hours in a row because that game, still controls like a dream and is immediately like just playing around with all these awesome concepts.
Yeah,
it kind of shows in stark contrast of like this is a really refined version of what they did, and for them to not update Mario in any way, it feels like a bit of a disservice where you could have easily, well, maybe not easily, but like you could have done more with that release for sure.
It deserves a little bit more, yeah. But there's plenty of positive things to talk about with Super Mario 64 for the deepest dive, so we don't have to unpack it all here. Let's see, Jacob Geller, do you know how this whole thing operates?
Is it selling unupgraded classics for a limited amount of time?
That's it. You've got it, everybody. Or it's Patreon. Patreon.com/MinnMax, 2 N's. If you support us at any tier, you get access to the Discord, and then there are tiers above that. Rook here supports us, and he says, hello there, travelers of the digital soundscape. Join Bryan Kish, Travis McGaughey, Rob Hudak, that's me, and special guests on Draft Punks each Thursday as we draft everything from MCU, Disney characters, Gen 2 Pokemon, Wii games, breakfast cereal, birds. This week, we're joined by none other than the lovely Kimberly Wallace to draft Game Informer covers. That's a super fun idea for a podcast. I want to listen to that. Follow along with our Twitter at RealDraftPunks, where you can also find the link to our Discord. Thanks as always to Greg Fleming Queso Griffith for the excellent intro track, Chris Drifter Lee for our bop of an outro track, and Alex the Hedgehog Brinigar for our fantastic graphic artwork. Be happy, be healthy, and most importantly, be kind to each other. Thank you, Rook. Also, thanks to the BAM Box. They say, hello, MinnMaxers. We are so thankful for the support you've shown us so far, and we're really excited about the box we've been able to get you next. Yes, the new Gamer Box has just gone on sale. It might be the best yet. This month's franchise are Super Mario Bros. 2, Portal 2, Simpsons, Bart's Nightmare, and Dead by Daylight. Also, with Halloween coming, we decided to celebrate 30 years of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror by doing a Simpsons pin set crossover between our Gamer Box, Geek Box, and Horror Box. It's our biggest crossover set in 5 years, and on top of that, the autograph in this box is one of the most iconic characters ever in gaming, a true grail item for any collector. We can't wait to see what you think about it. Be sure to receive your October Gamer Box at thebambox.com, and then hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. Okay, the most iconic character in gaming. Does anybody have a guess about what that could be?
They get the cameraman Lackey 2's signature.
Yep, the most
from
iconic.
Mario 64.
That's good. Mary, do you have a guess?
It has to be a character. They have to have like a, do they have to be self-aware? Like, can it be like?
Well, they're teasing an autograph. Yes, I don't know if like a wall could give an autograph. If it has a voice line, I guess it's eligible, right?
Okay. That's a tough one.
It is tough. Who can say?
Duke Nukem?
Oh, yes.
Nukem.
Duke Nukem is no doubt the answer. Check it out, the BAM Box. See if you can find out for yourself. Also, thanks to I Am 8-Bit. They are now selling an Ori Collector's Edition for Switch, Xbox One, and PC. I don't know if you all have seen this, but it's amazing. It's a premium transforming display box with glow-in-the-dark finish, majestic stained glass art style, the flora and fauna of Ori field guide, a sketchbook zine featuring rarely seen production art, collectible art card set, hardened animal glow-in-the-dark pin, digital download cards for Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori Will of the Wisp, soundtracks by composer Gareth Coker, physical editions of Ori and the Will of the Wisp and Ori and the Blind Forest featuring exclusive reversible cover art, and it's region-free, and it's available worldwide from I Am 8-Bit, and you can get it from their store using the new promo code RES-MINFINITE. The code will only be applicable on items under $100. So the code is REZ-MINNFINITE. they had to change the code because people keep sharing the codes on Reddit. So for this 10% off, now the new code is ResMinfinite. And thanks to IM8bit for supporting MinnMax, and you can help support MinnMax too by submitting a comment or question for us to read on the show. Help make the show better in more ways than one. Every week we choose the question of the week, and IM8bit ships them an amazing prize from their online store. And this week, the question of the week will receive the Res Infinite soundtrack, the double album. It is a beast with a full art book. So thanks to everybody that submits a wonderful question. We appreciate it. But before
that soundtrack is so good.
It's amazing. But before we get to this community question batch, Jacob Geller, do you want to give your charity stream one more plug?
That's right. So it's the Sword Stream 2020, and it will be starting this Friday, September 25th at 4 p.m. Eastern and running all through the night and all the way till that Saturday evening. And the stream as well is sponsored by IM8bit, and I will be raffling off different vinyl and physical editions of games and some very cool stuff. So that's exciting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be swinging by that stream at some point.
Serial will be there too.
That's sweet. Jacob, thank you for being on the show, sir.
It was my pleasure.
Ana Diaz, welcome to the MinnMax show.
Whoa.
Oh, and Mary Kish feels like dancing. Oh, actually, it's appropriate because we have community questions here. The first is from Lucy Yearwood that just says, "Yay, Mary." So they're picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, me too.
Then we have Rick from Atlanta who writes in and says, 2 quick questions for Mary. What is your favorite Just Dance song to dance to, and which horror game have you recently played that you absolutely loved? 2 perfect questions for you.
This is my favorite Just Dance song currently.
This Pac-Man song that Ana has thrown all of our way.
Dope Pac-Man song. I actually really like dancing to a lot of different like songs from let's see, there's some really good stuff from like Ariana Grande on Just Dance that really gets the blood pumping. But you can do like old classics too that I really love. Like they have some classics that are like that like, oh, now I can't remember the title of it, but it's one that's like bicycle.
Yeah,
That's
Bicycle Race. Yeah.
Classic forever. And
it
you
is
can
great.
like really enjoy the takes on those. So I love those types of, oh my God. I love these types of dance songs because they just really get me in the mood to, you know, get the heart rate up and enjoy yourself. And then for horror games that I enjoyed, I just finished my 8th Silent Hill game.
8th?
So we did I think maybe it's 7, but yeah, we did 1, 2, 3. And then there's The Room, and then we did Homecoming, and then we did Origins. And I think I've really enjoyed Origins a lot. And now we're coming up on Shattered Memories or Downpour. I'm not sure which one you guys feel stronger about, but I think like the Silent Hill series has its ups and downs for sure. But I feel strongly that like, even though 2 is the iconic one, there's actually still some gems in there that maybe people just didn't realize.
Yeah,
I like those first 4, and I really like Shattered Memories. I think that one's undersung, you know, a lot of ways.
Yeah, so you have that one to look forward to. That's perfect. Do you have a favorite stream of all time, Mary? Favorite stream you've ever done? Because I was looking at your Twitch channel today, and there was one that you just labeled as a hootenanny. That was the most heartfelt, sweet stream. You want to talk about that one, maybe?
Sure, that's a beauty. There's definitely like streams I feel really strongly about that were tied to GameSpot and Giant Bomb that I like, that are beloved to me in my past. So like playing Downwell on like Giant Bomb was like one of these like iconic moments where I felt amazing. But my personal Twitch channel, one of the favorite things that I was able to do was I recently learned the stand-up bass. The giant hot dog in my background is in fact my bass. It's just covered in a hot dog costume. And I was able to do, here it is. And I was able to do a backyard hootenanny with my landlord, actually, who is a tremendous banjo player, and his wife, who's a really good guitarist. And so they asked me to play stand-up bass. And so we just like play it together for our neighbors. And amazingly, they come out of the woodwork. Our neighbors come out with like glasses of wine and beer, and they all listen to us play really classic songs from like the 1930s era, and then a couple songs that I wrote that are about Shovel Knight.
Mary, that might be the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life.
It's definitely
awesome.
A work in progress. I just learned like a year ago, but it is super fun to play like that type of, I don't know, like homegrown bluegrass, like classic old school music. And so it's very fun and it's easy and I can drink while I do it. And those are like, that ticks all the boxes for me.
Perfect. Josh writes in, he says, well, COVID hasn't really affected the way we experience games, at least for me. It has made movies harder to look for this year. What's been a favorite movie from this year you've seen via streaming service or some other means? My personal favorite so far was Seth Rogen's An American Pickle on HBO Max. Favorite movies this year in the weirdest movie year in a while. What stands out for you, Anna?
Well, on streaming, I just sticking to that. I really enjoyed Palm Springs on Hulu. Like surprisingly charming. Like I wasn't expecting it to be bad by any means, but like was just actually like kind of really fun. And yeah, I enjoyed that quite a lot.
Yeah,
so
that was going to be my choice too. Yeah, it's on Hulu and it's the Groundhog Day inspired Andy Samberg, Kristen Melody. Is that how you say her name?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, but you think like, okay, Groundhog Day, I think I get where this thing's going to be going, but they have enough twists in there, enough fun aspects of the formula, kind of evolving it past where Groundhog Day ends. Yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite movie of the year at this point, but at this point, I think it'll just win every Oscar.
So many rom-coms that like Netflix has released, so it was fun to see Hulu do one and like get something that's a little fresh, because I feel like another, like a lot of streaming services have rom-coms are kind of like cheaper to make and kind of safer to make. So we've been seeing a lot of them. And so I was a little skeptical, but it was so fun.
Yeah. Does anybody else have one that stands out this year?
I really liked Defy Bloods, which I actually, which to be fair, I didn't watch until, the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. And I was surprised. Someone said like, hey, this is like a quintessential Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick
Was it Gita Jackson?
Yeah, I think it was actually.
I also watched it after seeing Gita's tweet.
But
anyway,
that movie is really good, both in how it kind of deals with a lot of the Vietnam era stuff, and also kind of ties into a lot of discourses we're having today. And it has some pretty creative techniques, like all of the stuff, because it's like jumping between past and present, because they're trying to get to this stash of gold that they stashed in Vietnam, and then Chadwick Boseman's character, like the idea is that they're also looking for his grave, because he dies they mentioned that he dies at the beginning of the film, and they're looking for him as well. But every time it cuts to the Vietnam era, it like goes into 4:3 perspective and kind of adds this filter of that makes it look like a war documentary. So it's like this really cool experiment of like, okay, this is also all the time and place, and it, all the characters are dressed differently and things like that, but they also kind of touch on a lot of kind of interesting and not always super comfortable topics about the Vietnam War and a lot of the fallout from that, and also political discourses that we're having today, and how those were kind of in part affected by a lot of the stuff that began in the Vietnam era. But it's if you're looking to watch something outside of Black Panther for Chadwick Boseman, I think that's probably the one. Because it is also this really strong ensemble cast that does a really good job of both, because it is a lot of ways about hey, let's honor the memory of this fallen soldier that we are all looking for, and is kind of the thing that ties us all together, even as we kind of realize we hate each other now, but this one this one remnant of the past is the only thing really keeping us together.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Trying to have a serious conversation about the passing of Chadwick Boseman with your background, Mary, is destroying my brain.
What he would have wanted.
Anyways, Mary, do you have a favorite movie from this year?
I recently, I like to watch a lot of apocalyptic or zombie scenario films, and there was a really good one on Netflix called Alive. I liked it a lot because it's kind of showcasing what you would do in that scenario if you made a lot of good choices. You know how frustrating it can be to watch people who just make horrible decisions throughout the entire film, and even like in Train to Busan, which I love personally, I was just like, get out of there, or like, move, lady, you're going to get eaten. This is kind of like the antithesis of this, where this person's making a lot of good decisions. They're you root for them, but they also like feel justified that they can make it through a lot of scenarios. But also when they do make mistakes, like for example, they're portioning out their meals because they know they can't live forever, on like a certain amount of ramen and some water. But he has this like moment of weakness where he sees an ad of someone eating ramen and he's like, and he like pours it. And it's just like, that's something I would do too, right? Like if you hadn't eaten in 3 days, and you would absolutely do that. And so very relatable characters, a very like cool story scenario of what happens if you're like in an apartment complex and you see it you can see it out your window. And so you can't leave, but eventually you have to.
I love that. What's it called again?
I think it's called Alive, and I might be incorrect, and it might be #Alive, because the entire thing is like on social media. He's saying that he has to #stay alive, and so he's kind of documenting it. For a brief second, I feel like he's a streamer because they show his like webcam and he's like chatting to people and like playing a video game, which is really funny. And then he's like documenting his like his process and like how in trouble he is. And it's interesting. Yeah, I was really satisfied with it. And I find myself kind of picky when it comes to zombie movies like that. So I loved it.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Doreen Claire writes in, says, this year would have been weird for us all in a lot of ways, but in a gaming context, I've played genres I never thought I would. I played the Kris Tales demo, a turn-based RPG, Spiritfarer, a management game, and lately I've been dying to play Hades, a roguelike. What's a game that tops your favorite games list from a genre you often avoid or don't generally like? By the way, we had multiple people write in. They're like, I don't like roguelikes, but I like Hades, so I guess I like the genre now. Like, it is really broken through to a new audience. But does anything stand out for anybody for this year?
Oh, it should be from this year too.
You know what?
Like a genre.
Let's say of any time.
I think probably StarCraft and Company of Heroes, I think, are like my two real-time strategy games. And anytime I try to break out of that and say, I'll play a Total War game, or I'll play like any 4X games or Civ, like any of that's the kind of like overall you have to manage something, those types of games, I bottom out pretty quickly on them.
Yeah, yet you love Dota so much.
That's true, but that's like almost a different, like that's a completely different genre even. Like you're not building bases, you're destroying them.
I understand. Night and day. I get it. Does anything else stand out for anybody?
I mean, Splatoon and Splatoon 2, like, I feel like that's the first time I really, really got into like a first-person shooter and also like played on a team with people and tried to like get really into it.
Ooh, what is that process like? Every time I played Splatoon, I've enjoyed it, but it's like, man, it would be really fun if we all took it really seriously, but like trying to actually communicate with the team is a nightmare. Yeah,
I mean, well, it's like you go online, you try and find people to play with, like through, I don't know, I went through like Reddit. And it's just like, it's, Nintendo just isn't set up to do that. And so I think like I would have stuck a lot more with it had it been, like on PC and could connect to Discord easily. There's just too many logistical stuff. And I'm like, this is not worth it. I'm just going to do unranked.
Yeah. I think people in the MinnMax Discord play, like that seems like it would be the way to go. Just get a group together in there and then try and take it seriously. Because I love Splatoon, but like it turns into a pretty light podcast game pretty easily for multiplayer. But I do think like coordinating would bring it to another level that I should probably try at some point.
It's really fun when it gets competitive because like there is so much creativity with using the different weapons. And like, I don't know, it's just that, again, like takes extra work.
Right. Sean Mason writes in and says, looking back at my childhood, I had many influences in my life, but the most influential person I would say would be my 7th grade ELA teacher, Mr. Banks. Let's see. Looking back at your childhood, who do you think inspired you the most to get into the video game industry? Was it Mr. Banks for everybody?
Yeah, he
was an icon.
Yeah, you're talking about Agent Cody Banks, right? The
yeah, I saw that film and I said, my God, I need to get into the game industry so I can make the Agent Cody Banks video game.
Yeah.
Does anything stand out? Mary, was there somebody that pushed you in the right direction or the wrong direction? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, in my life, trying to think of like lots of influential people. When I was at the age of probably 17, I had like very little to no guidance of what I wanted to do with my life. And I was really fortunate as I went through all sorts of different things that I was like passionate about, to find a video production teacher who was like, yeah, just like dink around with this camera and let me take it home and stuff. And that's where I fell in love with video production. I certainly wouldn't have gone to college for it. I certainly wouldn't be talking to you right now without like just a simple college professor who like, or high school teacher who just like, Torrance, Mr. Torrance. I remember you. He pushed me to take a camera home, and I fell in love with video production and editing, and that's why I still do it. So that was pretty cool. I mean, you're always fortunate to find like various people in your life that give you a heads up or push you in the right direction. So it's always cool to see people like that.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp where I had a high school teacher, Mr. Harrier, and it was a pretty small school, but for some reason a video department grew, or like one video class, and it was just amazing to be like, oh, I can just use all of these cameras and I can use editing software for the first time in my life. I don't have to, record to tape for making these stupid, embarrassing home movies. And then I remember so many nights of just staying late at school, falling in love with video editing. It's like, this is just the best. And it's all just because that one class existed, realistically. I mean, it's amazing these impacts a small decision like that can have. Anna, do you feel like somebody nudged you to try and get into the game industry?
Unfortunately, okay, so I was in high school and I had like a Tumblr blog, and it was pretty popular. It was like gaming news, and I would just take it from Kotaku. Sorry,
just copy and paste it.
I saw an opportunity. Okay, then I had like a college counselor who was like, "Hey, you can't spend all this time on Tumblr. Like, you have to like, do all this other stuff." And so I'm like, I guess you're right. So I just stopped. But then I was very fortunate to have like a college professor who was very much like, hey, if like you were to shed away all these expectations and do exactly the thing you wanted to do, like what would you be doing? And so then I was like, well, I would want to like write about video games. And so that, sort of set me back on the path.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to her. Zornitsa Kermachiva. It's a really long name.
What is the name?
It's Bulgarian. Kermachiva, yeah.
That's perfect. And just like that one conversation.
I mean, she was like a longtime mentor. And so she was like very consistently like pushing me to think about what I wanted to write about, like what I was interested in. Yeah. Yeah.
Suriel, do you have a influential person from your past?
I think by the time I was in high school, like I think I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I think Mr. Allen, who's my high school teacher, it wasn't so much that he was like, hey, you should write about video games. He was kind of like the first person who didn't like balk at the idea of writing about video games, because everyone else would be like, what are you talking? Like, there's no career path to that. You can't go to trade school to write about video games. Like, journalism is the closest thing, but like even that, like you're why are you doing this to yourself? Like, this isn't going to work out. And Mr. Allen was like the first person who was like, no, I think you have a good enough head on your shoulders that I don't think you're stupid. So I think if you have a good plan for this, I don't see why you wouldn't do it. And he was like the person who kind of gave me a bunch of book recommendations of like, here's how to just be like a good communicator. And here's like, Stephen King's On Style and things like that. And he was like the first person who was like, I don't think you need a lot of the schooling you're getting at this point, because it wasn't like my high school wasn't particularly great, but he was like just read this instead. Like, don't worry about, what the curriculum for a lot of this stuff is. Just read this stuff on top of it. And this feels like it's more along your career path than anything we're going to show you here. Yeah.
He didn't shame you for your Smash fan fiction. He encouraged it.
Yeah. He was always ready to read the next chapter. If you follow my chronology, that was after I stopped in 6th grade. So obviously
I see. I won't judge. I've
grown past that phase.
Mary, when you look back at the GameSpot era and video production there, what do you wish you did more of? Like, after leaving Game Informer, I've always been up in my head about like, I wish I would have pushed more this direction. I was there from 2010. And so it's just like, there's so many regrets of like, I wish I would have pushed harder on Twitch. I wish I would have pushed harder on YouTube. Mm-hmm. When you look back at GameSpot, is there anything that stands out for missed opportunities just to, get negative for you?
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I actually have like a lot of positive memories. Even the negative ones were like wonderful learning experiences, like being able to produce the lobby that Danny O'Dwyer hosted was a massive learning experience. So even though the show didn't always go the way I wanted, and if I could go back in time, I might have done it differently. I'm grateful that it ran the course that it did, because I learned what worked and what didn't. And I learned a lot about how to produce a show from my mistakes. So to like make it positive, I would say every mistake I made while working at GameSpot was instrumental in me understanding more about how to produce a show and how to technically direct a show. I learned how to use a TriCaster from GameSpot, and that actually was really valuable for me to be able to technically direct shows at Twitch. So it was a constant learning process. I think if I could do it again, I would do more of the things that I didn't know how to do. I felt very comfortable playing a video game because I can do that and I can talk to an audience. But the most value things that I learned was how to bus audio through like an audio router, and like how to make different scenes live on a TriCaster while a live show is going on. And I learned those in moments of weakness where I was like, I don't know how. And I can't stress this enough to other people. Like, that's what you'll wish you will always have done, would be to ask and learn and grow. So like, I wish that I got over that stigma that I was a dumb kid at GameSpot earlier, because we were all dumb kids and will continue to be that way. You should be asking how to do stuff so that you can improve and grow.
Yeah, it's amazing to see just during the quarantine, everybody becoming a little bit more of a tech expert. I mean, even like my parents, grandparents, like everybody just has to up their game a little bit. And hopefully it nudges people in the right direction to realize that, like, yeah, it's not really that hard. Like, you know, even building the old MinnMax studio, or I'm in the process of building the new one over there and stuff like that. It's like, it's just a lot of Googling. There's no secret sauce here. It's like Mary said, asking questions to Google or to somebody else in your life, to a mentor. Like, that's all that's going on. It doesn't take that much work to start your own podcast. It's just a couple Googles away. And I think the quarantine has pushed people in the direction of realizing that, we can actually do this. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I've seen people who like have avoided putting together a live show for years finally have to. And it's been really funny, and it's admirable to give it a whirl. You know, for someone who like went live for the first time on a company's podcast and then was like, I guess I'll just try it at home on my own. The reality is that it's never perfect, and you always start somewhere, and your somewhere will be bad. But being really bad at something is the first step to being okay at it. So you just got to get over that hurdle and go live with your crappy setup. That's just fine. Just do it. That's like the main, you know, crux of the argument. Just get out there and make something shitty. Why don't you?
I'm sure you get asked this all the time, and I apologize, but do you have tips for people, you know, starting to stream on Twitch? Basic content tips, you know, personality tips, tech tips, what comes to mind for just the go-to Twitch tips?
Yeah, I got dozens. I got probably too many. Yeah. I get asked a lot. And I also run Creator Camp, which is our education portal on Twitch about how to start on Twitch. So my first tip is to do research and go to various sites. Don't just try Creator Camp, which gives you Twitch-centric information, but perhaps you'd be interested in other types of places that you can also go live to. You can go live on other places, and it's also really like valuable. And so you should be looking at the people that you admire or you like and seeing where they're learning and look at their resources. I feel adamant that the most important thing is that you will always want to interact with your audience. Live is an engaging platform, so it's not passive. You're not watching a VOD. And so the biggest mistake I always see people make is that maybe they have a really good camera and they have a really good audio mic, and they did all the bells and whistles, but they forget to talk to the people who are watching them live. And so I see creators of all shapes and sizes on our platform. I see success, I see not. And the successful people all have the same thing in common, which is that they're really engaging and entertaining to watch. It doesn't mean you have to be really good at the game. Sometimes they're really funny comedians. Sometimes they're really good ad-libbers. Sometimes they change their voice based on the characters they're talking about. Sometimes they're just wicked hot, and that's cool too. And I think like you should just find your niche, whatever that is, and hone in on it. But don't think that a good camera and a good mic and a good background is what's going to save you. That's really not the case. Sometimes it's like a mix of your vibe and what you want to give to the world, but understand that it is an interactive platform. It's supposed to be an online experience that only happens once. Like this program that you just had, everyone who is on Patreon and is watching and visually watching it live got to see a bunch of ladies dancing with Pac-Man. That was a one-time experience
for the backstage
that
pass,
we fudged and can't be done again. It can't be experienced again. Like they can watch it on YouTube afterwards, but they only got to experience it with us in real time. And that's the value of these experiences. So you want to have those the most. More dancing ladies is all I'm trying to say.
Okay, great. Got it. Cree McCree writes in and says, Super Mario 64 was Nintendo's first try at a 3D platformer, and to this day, it's one of the best 3D platformers of all time. Well, we'll talk about it with the deepest dive. I keep thinking about how they got it so right on the first attempt. What are your favorite examples of getting it so right on the first try, whether it's in games, music, movies? Does anything jump to mind for getting something right on the first try?
I feel like even it's not looked upon super well, but like I still think like the first Silent Hill is like a really good kind of here's kind of the setup, because every other game refined it, you know, and like I don't think a lot of people are super nostalgic. I think everyone talks about Silent Hill 2 as like here's the definitive Silent Hill game, but I think that first one had so many of the elements of that first one. Of like the rest of the series that all of them just feel like they're iterating on that in a way that is like I still think that makes it a unique game. It's not like a you know all timer, but so many of the elements that made that series what it is were in place just from the get go in the first one.
Yeah. I don't even know where that team. I don't know how much you know about the development history of Silent Hill, but I don't know where that team came from within Konami, what they'd worked on before to come together to create something so unique. It's crazy.
Yeah, it also helped that like horror has always felt like this kind of. Oh, you have to be a little weird. You have to be idiosyncratic. You know, like obviously the first Resident Evil was like, oh, you know, by today's standards, it controls poorly. But that kind of helped, you know, that and Silent Hill be kind of like, oh, this is kind of unsettling because it does control so poorly. But even now, it's a thing that people still want to do, right? Is like people are fond of those tank controls. Yeah.
I think it's kind of in the same vein as a Super Mario 64, but even that was iteration to some extent. But like Toy Story. I think like Pixar's first full animated film and the first fully animated, 3D animated film, just for that movie to hold up so well and to be at such an unbelievable high bar is stunning.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, obviously, it's aged. It's not like the best looking film anymore. But like, yeah, the writing and everything been below the kind of like the tech hurdles and stuff. I think that stuff is still good enough to carry that movie even now.
It's so weird going back to that movie.
Well.
Yeah. The writing and the performances in particular really age well. But the weirdest thing is the blinking in that movie is all like out of sync. Like the way Woody blinks, it's like one eye and then the other. And I don't know if they're going for like, oh, it's a freaky doll thing. Toys don't blink like humans. Or if just tech-wise, it was tough to synchronize that because you look back at some of the tools they're using, it seemed impossible. It's like entering numbers for every bit of animation, but it is terrifying to look at only for the blinking alone. Let's see. We have Fizz, who writes in enraged about last week's episode of the podcast, saying last week, there was a lot of bashing of caveman media. We just think it's dumb and they should stop making caveman media. And I felt compelled to defend the genre. Have none of you watched Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal? Yes, it is just one 5-episode animated series at the moment, but is undoubtedly the savior of the entire caveman genre. I love Dexter's Laboratory, and so I should probably watch Primal. Okay, I guess that's fair. And then Adam Levi writes in and says, yeah, cavemen represent millions of years of our history, and they deserve more attention in the media landscape. Agree to disagree, Adam. I just think caveman movies and caveman games and caveman books are dumb, and I'm going to stand by it. But maybe Genndy can convince me. Mark Ramirez writes in and says, hey, Ben and crew, I love the Sid Meier interview from last week, and I especially love the questions about how his faith intersects with his work. I tried. So we interviewed Sid Meier, and it was about his memoir. And I've heard from the developers, and even, I went to visit Firaxis back at Game Informer, and he's like a very religious guy. So it's like, maybe this is an avenue where outside of games promotion, just talking about his memoir, he'd be up for talking about that. And if that's kind of affected the really positive tone of Firaxis in general. And then you can hear how it went. I didn't think it went well. He was just kind of like, I guess it might have had an impact. Let me tell you about moral choices in our games. And it's like, well, okay, not exactly what I was going for. But anyways, Mark asks, are there any topics that you wish people didn't shy away from or were more honest with in interviews?
I'm always curious. I feel like the profitability of like certain like events or games is always kind of like Like I think about Cecilia de Anastasio's piece on the esports bubble and how it really asked like a lot of questions that I didn't see being asked, like trying to think about like the actual, feasibility of some of these enterprises. And I wish we'd talk more about like the business of games, to be honest, and like the bottom line and I know that's all kept secret, like on purpose a lot of times, but I'm personally interested in like the business side of things, and I wish we talked about it more.
Yeah, just be more open with the numbers for games of, hey, how much does this game cost? I think if you ask the average gamer, they just have no frame of reference for how much games are costing these developers because that info just isn't really out there.
Yeah, and also like, and I think that touches on a recent debate, like change of price from like $60 to $70. Like there's a lot of discourse around it because there's a lot of things that we don't know. And it's like, why are games $60? Why is that the standard? I don't know, but I would love to learn and ask someone who would be like, open and honest with answering that question.
Yeah. I mean, it's also that thing though of most of the time you want to interview a designer or somebody on the development team and they don't care if they're a good designer, they don't care about the money. They're not too focused on that. It's like, I don't know. Somebody else focuses on that. But I guess maybe is it the responsibility of the press to every once in a while reach out to be like, hey, who's in charge of the books around here? Let's actually talk to them. But then you're not going to get an honest answer about it. It's frustrating. But I think that's good. I think, just more honesty on the business side of things. Then even just how scary it is to be developing a game, to be showing your game in the early stages. I always am a sucker for interviews where the developers just are frank about, this is terrifying to see this reaction. I am so sensitive reading every comment about this game. And I feel like there's always a little bit of a bravado, a little bit of this game's going to be great. Better than the last one. Just wait and see. But if you really had a microscope on their soul, they're just terrified about what's going on and the reception the game's going to have, right? I think so. But yes, I'm totally with you on it. I wrote down cost of things as something that I really wanted to see. Sincerely, Eric writes in asking if I can give a review of the new Jurassic Park show on Netflix. Yes, I want to watch that. I haven't watched that yet, but maybe we can do a Max spoilers in the future about that.
There's a show?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's called Cretaceous Park, Camp Cretaceous, and it's like a kids animated show.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're really going ham with that license of the park, hey? Oh,
yeah. Speaking of which, they released Minecraft DLC for Jurassic World, and I checked it out. I was playing on a base PS4. It is an effing nightmare. Like, the music, which in a Jurassic Park piece of DLC, you want at least the music to be great, it barely runs. It's just like this choppy mess. Everything is breaking down. I got nauseated immediately because the frame rate is like 15. It sucks. Like, I can't believe that they're just releasing that. And maybe it is just the base PS4 versions is going to be quite a bit weaker than everything else. But I was amazed that that was released and nobody really remarked upon what a disaster it was. And then the dinosaurs got out. It was no good, you guys.
Yeah, they should have kept those in there.
I don't know what they were thinking.
That's their first problem.
They learned nothing.
Yeah.
On PS4 Pro, do you know if they stay in there?
They do. They stay in.
The system is so much more powerful.
Yep, you got to upgrade. Sincerely, Eric, though, also is asking, we already know who wins with toaster strudels versus Pop-Tarts. The answer is toaster strudels. There's no debate there. Mary, I see you thinking, but I assume you came to the right conclusion.
Wait, what is the right answer?
I think we should be reasonable here at the amount of effort to enjoyment. Because when people argue to the death that certain burgers are the best, they're doing it based on cost and ease of access and all these different scenarios. I mean, if I'm running to get my bus, I ain't gonna get a frozen strudel, dude. I'm gonna grab me a nice room temperatured tart. and it's going to be delicious.
If we're judging every food on how easy it is if you're sprinting to a bus at the moment, that's a terrible way to review.
I think your requirement
it's based
works.
on if I can run from the cops and eat it.
I don't think that's a bad metric.
Oh, God. That's right. I guess we did talk about this on MinnMax. It's an old debate cereal. But everybody acts like making a toaster strudel is like climbing to the top of Mount Everest. You squeeze a packet. It's like, I'm lazy.
You can't do that
hell.
when you're running from the cops.
All right.
Also, the demographic. You should be making something better by now, like eggs and an omelet, for God's sakes.
If you're
the
prepping
toaster
something,
strudel, the toaster strudel era is 9.
Okay,
We're talking about young breakfast options. It's up there with Go-Gurt, man.
Okay, controversial question:
yes.
toaster strudel or hot pocket?
Ooh.
Interesting.
Because I feel like they're on similar prep levels.
Yeah, I would take toaster strudel.
What time of day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they're
like those are different meals at some point.
Yeah, but
although there are breakfast hot pockets, to be fair.
Oh yeah.
Do they have sweet hot pockets though?
no.
I think they're called toaster strudels.
That's right. Cream of the crop.
Rebranded a sweet hot pocket.
Yeah.
Anyways, he
Sweet
says
pockets,
Ben was clearly wrong about the pie choice. All right, sorry. All the hits. Cake or pie was the debate. Anna or Mary,
Thank you.
you have thoughts on these?
I was on the show for this.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Mary, cake or pie?
Oh, pie.
Okay, correct. There we go. Anyways, he has more questions for us. This feels like
you moved that on real quickly.
Yeah.
well, it's just the right answer. Okay, so here are Eric's other burning questions. And by the way, this reminds me of Mary's episode of 99 Questions with community member Bob Buell, the podcast where, she answered a ton of questions. But here's some more for you. All right, Mary, Bugs Bunny versus Mickey Mouse.
Who would win?
In your heart.
Murder the other to the death?
I think who's your favorite? Which is better?
Is it a debate? Oh. Because if it was to the death, I would I think I would go with Bugs Bunny because I think he's more cunning.
Although, if you've seen those early Mickey Mouse shorts, I mean, like the first Mickey Mouse short's just called Plain Crazy, and it's just him like torturing Minnie. Like he's dastardly if he needs to be.
I think he's really mellowed out in recent years, though.
That's what big money will do to you.
All right, well, that's definitive. Cereal, Pepsi versus Coke.
Coke.
Anna, Digimon versus Pokemon.
I mean, Pokemon, but Digimon's great. Come on, guys. We don't need to pit them against each other.
I'm sorry, only one survives. Mary, killer question. Spring versus fall.
Fall.
Yes.
Always.
Correct. God, how are you right so often?
I don't know. You tell me. Pop-Tarts still are valid.
Cereal, Marvel.
Back at you.
Marvel versus DC. Cereal. Is he frozen, or is he really thinking about that?
Oh, he is frozen.
He's frozen.
Okay, he's back. Frozen like a strudel. Marvel versus DC, Cereal.
Marvel.
Okay, there it is. This is perfect. Anna, up versus down.
It's
Down.
so perfect.
Down.
It's perfect in my mind.
Perfect question for me. Down.
Well, in my mind, it was perfect for what it ends on, getting to Mary for the last one. But it's Mary, dog versus cat.
Oh, I think we're all aware of what I'm going to say here. It's the puppers.
It's Pikachu. Which, I'm amazed Mary has a Pikachu behind her. And then Anna, for the first time, do you not have a Pikachu in the frame?
He's right next to me. Come on.
I see.
That might be the same size.
Yeah, this one's pretty big. It's a knockoff, and it is perfect.
Where'd you get it?
That's Pakicha.
It was a gift. Everyone in my life who knows me just gives me Pikachu. So
just Pikachu everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not joking.
Does it ever get annoying? Is it ever too much?
No, never. It's never been too much.
So it's just
never
like
annoying.
Pikachu toothpaste, everything, hubcaps. It's all good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
That's
Please buy me.
I wouldn't know it was
card.
a knockoff if you didn't tell me. I would have said that was.
That looks pretty good for a knockoff.
No, it's great. I love it. I mean, maybe it's not a knockoff. I thought by the tag that it was.
The butt should tell you.
So
sorry for the blatant Pikachu ass.
There
If
is
it has a hole, it's a knockoff.
That's right. Pikachu doesn't have a butthole.
Absolutely not.
no
Canonically.
butthole, no tag. So I think it's a
Okay.
knockoff.
There we go.
Yeah, this one has a tag.
Suriel, how far would you have to run to find a Pikachu to hold into the camera?
I don't think there's one in this house.
Okay.
But I have a Snorlax downstairs.
Really? Chained up
How
in the
big is
basement?
it?
Pretty big. It'd probably take up this whole frame.
Amazing.
Ooh.
That sounds cool.
Do you want to see my favorite Pikachu memorabilia item I have?
Yes, we do.
That's it.
I got this in Japan. It's a Suica purse, so it holds your Suica. But what I love about it is that it doesn't have the front of Pikachu. It is very specifically an ass purse.
That's
It's a trophy.
It's just the butt.
Hang on, I have to
thought
find
that
my
was
favorite
pretty
Pikachu merch. Hang on.
Okay.
Hold on.
And while we're talking about Pokemon plushes, I saw someone tweet it was like PS5 or Giant Mary. The choice is clear, and I think the choice is still clear. Is the Giant Mary is clearly the superior option to spend $500.
Suriel, you got that
I come with
fast.
tags.
Yes, yes.
Suriel has a giant Snorlax now sitting in his chair.
Yes.
It's
Play.
Very good. Very good.
yeah, it's
Oh
really
my
good.
gosh.
That's
All right.
uncanny.
And do the rest of the podcast just talking below the mic with Snorlax there.
I got this in Japan. It's my favorite weird thing. It's just a little Pikachu teacup. Oh my gosh, it's so out of focus for the camera. Just tiny
Wait,
little
let me
keychain Pikachu teacup.
It's not in the camera.
It's not
Your
in the
camera's-
camera.
Oh,
The camera's
sorry.
in
I was
front
looking
of
at the
you.
other camera.
Oh my
you see
gosh,
this?
it's so tiny.
It's so cute.
So
Aw.
tiny.
And it's filled with delicious tea.
I have a Pikachu mug for your Pikachu
love
team.
that.
There's no end.
Oh boy. Hey, speaking of fandom, Santrude writes in and says, quick Devil May Cry question for Suriel. On a scale from dismal to smokin' sexy style, how do you rate Virgil's new theme music?
Oh, I haven't listened to it, so it doesn't have a ranking yet. But I'm sure it can't be better than Devil Trigger.
Nothing's better than Devil Trigger. Oh, by the way, Suriel, we got roasted in the Avengers comment section for the Max spoilers on Avengers we did, because I said that they played some forgettable metal song, and every Iron Maiden fan known to man came out to really blast me and say that, hey, Iron Maiden is not forgettable. Fuck you, buddy. So noted. BeatenDownBrian has a question saying, hey, band and console pre-order loving cohorts. Hello. What do you think are the 5 most played games ever? I'm not talking about best-selling, but the 5 games played by the most amount of individual people.
League of Legends, right?
Oof. Total?
Fortnite, I would say it's probably up there.
Fortnite.
Fortnite's probably up there. Do we think, Candy Crush, is that close to number
Tetris.
1?
Do you
Yeah.
count all the Tetrises?
Which combined probably, I don't know if is there a universally like this is by far the most played one? Because
Also,
what about just Digital Solitaire? Digital Solitaire. Do you think that's played more than Fortnite? I think it's got to be close. There's a lot of old weirdos out there.
Yeah.
yeah.
Old weirdo. We're seeing a huge resurgence in digital chess, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Why do you think that is?
Because it's a classic game that most people know how to play. And it's now in an era where you can't go outside. And so it is a nice gateway game that you would feel comfortable playing with a stranger.
That's beautiful. Did you have that written down in front of you?
No, I just like saying the word strange.
It's also really easy to backseat play somebody if they're not doing what it's like, well, obviously, clearly what he should have done,
Right. Yeah, I see you heckling people on Twitch that are trying to play chess.
all those chess geniuses out there.
Catch me by my
explaining.
username Chess Heckler, which I coined very early on.
You just go over like the basics. The bishop's badass. Use that one, dude. Like this secret strategy.
Rook is OP.
You should do a stream of you heckling other people while playing chess.
People love it when you do that.
Oh, it's great. Do you all have a favorite question of the week?
From this week?
From this week, yeah.
Or of all time?
We can throw it in there. I like the one about teachers or just influential people early on. That was nice.
I do like that one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ooh, questions should be asked more, but Mary, you're the guest of honor. Do you want to throw it a certain direction?
Of what? I need more information. What happened?
Choosing the question of the week winner. Like what your favorite question was.
Oh, who answered it the best or the best question?
No,
I really
the best.
did like
the best.
What the best
of,
question
like,
is?
Yeah.
Yeah, the best question was definitely it's probably a toss-up. It was that or like what we learned at our previous game industry jobs, because I think they're both really valid, but it's like all about progress. But I think knowing that like basically we were all teens, some teacher just changed the course of our lives. And I think that's beautiful.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Sean Mason. You're also beautiful. And you are winning the sweet Res Infinite double album from I'm 8-Bit. So thanks so much to I'm 8-Bit for shipping that out. And thanks to everybody that submits a wonderful question each and every week by supporting us on Patreon. And now it's time for something we call Get a Load of This. Anna, I know it was a quick turnaround. Did you have one this week?
Yeah, I do. I was like, I wrote it down in everything so that I wouldn't forget. And okay, so get a load of this.
Yes.
BTS, the K-pop group, did a concert for NPR, a Tiny Desk concert. It broke all these records. It is like very much, I would say, outside of the wheelhouse of NPR. So I was kind of surprised to see them do a class. Also, because I'm like, BTS is huge. Like NPR's Tiny Desk is not that big. So whoever pulled it off, congratulations, because it broke records for Tiny Desk. And it was an incredibly charming performance. Like K-pop is known for these ginormous sold out stadiums with like these big productions and like all these props and costumes. And it's like, it's not about going small, it's about going big. So to see them like stripped down to like mainly vocals, sitting in like, I think a record shop together singing was very enjoyable. And it was a lot of fun. It showed us a side of this group that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, they've had plenty of big acts on Tiny Desk. So I love the idea that BTS comes in and just crushes all the records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's wild. Suriel, do you have one?
Yeah, so you might have heard about the meme of Can It Run Doom in terms of like, hey, we're going to get all this technology to run Doom, and that's kind of like the thing that you do on any kind of screen. But someone actually did something very different where they released a Doom WOD, which is a mod for the original Doom that is a Mortal Kombat game. So you basically, what you can do is you can play this kind of like hybrid version of like 2 and 3 with 12 characters that is like you basically run Doom and you find a thing and then you basically play Mortal Kombat inside of Doom. And it's like they kind of redid, like they just imported a bunch of the assets and just
weird.
It is a fully playable Doom. And they also have like a bunch of references to Doom in the game itself, where a lot of like the animalities and transformations and stuff, instead of transforming, Liu Kang into a dragon, it turns him into a demon that uses the assets from Doom.
Weird.
So it's this weird, like it's more like, it feels like more like performance art than it is like, oh yeah, there's a cool game you can play. It just feels like I did this because I thought I could. And it's like there's a video from the YouTube channel PND Ketchup and Mustard, and it just goes into detail of what the mod is and how it came to be, and like it seems like a pretty interesting feat because it looks pretty close to what Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 look like, which is impressive to run inside of Doom.
That's awesome. Mary, did you have one?
So this is just content that we're like saying everybody should know what this is?
Yeah, something that you said, hey, this is interesting. What an interesting little tidbit.
Absolutely. It is the Pac-Man Pinky, Blinky, Clyde, and Pinky dance. I just found out about this, you guys. You're going to be blown away by the choreography, the colors, the outfit, iconic dance moves. Let's give it up again for the Pac-Man dance.
Woo! It's really stunning. Anyways, hey, get a load of this. I just had a long road trip out to South Dakota. I went on vacation out there in the Badlands and Black Hills, and it was just wonderful. And on the drive, I listened to this history podcast called The Constant, which is about a history of getting things wrong, which is an interesting theme. And they have this recurring theme within the podcast of just bashing Aristotle, one of the wisest minds of all time, because he just constantly got everything wrong. Like, he wrote extensively about, how shark mouths should be on the tip of their nose, but they're not. They're underneath. Otherwise, they would eat too much and choke to death. He argued that women have fewer teeth than men. It's like, well, everybody knows. It's like
classic argument.
Like Aristotle just
There's no way you
counted.
can prove that one wrong.
That old chestnut. Yeah.
He also wrote that flies have 4 legs. It's like, Aristotle, just look at a fly, you idiot. I don't know what you're doing. And then he was arguing.
Philosophy, dude.
Yeah, he was arguing that snot was chunks of our brain that was coming out of our faces. So
okay, this gives me hope though, because you see so many bad takes on Twitter, coming from yours truly. And it's like a brain melt just on the internet. So imagine if Aristotle had Twitter and was like, women have fewer teeth than men.
Canceled.
we only see the good. We only see the good takes looking back, and so this gives me a little hope for everyone else.
Yeah, we can all be
Aristotle ate his own boogers because he was afraid he was losing his brain mass.
Yeah, like every time he sneezed, he just had like a little ancient Greek shot glass in front of him, then just like threw it back immediately. Hey, it's Aristotle. Don't blame me. Okay, Mary. Oh, yes, Ariel?
No, I said, to be fair, the guy also thought sharks should have mouths in the front, so how much brain power could he have?
That's a good point. He was
if
running
he's
on
so smart, how come he's dead?
That's a good point.
Come at us, Aristotle, or your ancestors. We'll take them all on. Do you think, are there any people that claim to be ancestors of like those ancient Greeks, do you think? Or is it just all of Greece?
Of all ancient Greeks ever.
I'm just saying, do you think if there's a family in Greece that like, hey, we came from Aristotle?
Oh, from Aristotle's? No.
Okay, great. Then come at us,
and
Aristotelians.
They talk like mobsters from the 1940s.
Look.
Hey, our ancestors were mafia, the Aristotle.
Hey,
let me tell you about a
dialectic.
cave, see? I don't think that's the right philosophy.
You nailed it.
You get the idea.
Oh, yeah. Mary, what would you like to plug?
I stream 3 days a week. I stream typically indie games on Monday. I stream Resident Evil or Dead Space on Tuesday. And I stream Silent Hill on Thursday. So come take a look.
And if they were to Google something specifically, what should they Google?
It would be my name, Mary Kish. My Twitter is Twitch is MERRYKISH.
Perfect.
Check it out.
Yeah, thank you for being here. You have been a delight. Thanks for swinging by.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This media will change my life forever. I feel blessed to have been exposed to it. Thank you guys for having fun with me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody that's in the Backstage Past for watching live and submitting great answers to the questions from the community. And thanks to the following Patreon supporters for their generous support of MinnMax at the $50 tier. The Bam Box, Rob Hudak, I Am 8-Bit, Jawarhello, Mirko Arico-Torreno, Tyler Thorney, Zachary Pligge, Rebekah Lang, BeatenDownBrian, Bryan with a Y, IanTClark, Mark Seliga, Captain Stubbs 1, Ludwig Roque, Andrew Vala, Kris, Jesse Vitelli, Thomas Hoster, Snake24, Yarrow, William Garcia, SpiralInYourEyes, Richard Smuts, JT Fels, Spider-Dan, Steve Bamdad, Alex Payne. Thank you so much, everybody. Be good, have fun, let's go.